Opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh man, there's got to be something to listen to on this dial.
This message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays as we light the void with Joe Root on Spaced Out Radio.
Ties we had formed, told all the lies to myself, while sleepwalking through it all.
You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void, on Facebook at Lighting the Void, and you can call into tonight's show at 501-777-5631. You can also follow Joe at spacedoutradio.com.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as done.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Why don't you talk into the microphone? I got a backup mic right here. Check 1, 2. Testing, testing. Yeah, they both working, and guess what? They don't like no feedback. What's up?
Now, let's fire the show up and light the void on Spaced Out Saturdays with your host, Joe Root.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Saturday Night. That's right, I'm your host, Joe Root, and it's good to have you with us, and it's great to be here. I'm very honored to be here. I'm filling some huge shoes. Really, I am. Taking over for Dave Cruz. And I want to say thank you all for welcoming me the way you have. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed our journey into the void with weekly guests we will be having on to unlock some of the mysteries going on in this crazy, wonderful universe. But real quick, let's welcome in everyone listening on our terrestrial stations. WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We're live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com. Spreaker as well. There's a chat room in there. Come hang out with us. And we're also live on The Fringe FM. And if you like our music, then you can always rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. Also, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. And you can follow me on Twitter at Lighting the Void as well. You can subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Not Spaced Out Radio Show, so go over to the new YouTube channel and subscribe, please. And you can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the USA, tune us in on TuneIn, download our show from iTunes, and of course, the website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. Now, if you want to take part in the show, you can sign in to one of our chat rooms on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, on Facebook at SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just go to the hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and I'll get your questions in there as well. Now, the call-in number for the show, if we open the phone lines up, and when we open the phone lines up, is 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631. And if you head over to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to Spaced Out Radio store and pick up a T-shirt, poster, or SOR sticker. We also have the Encounter online that deals with everything paranormal. You can check out all the latest blog posts there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also have some great video viewing there as well. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what this show will be about every Saturday night. You know, as I've taken over the Dave Cruz's spot, like I said, it's really an honor. I hope I can do it some justice. I'll do everything I can for you, I promise. And some of you already know that I host a show on Tuesday and Wednesday nights on the Fringe FM called Lighting the Void. Now, it airs 2 hours before Spaced Out Radio every Tuesday and Wednesday night, where we bridge the gap between spirituality and science. My goal here, though, is to go down this journey with a journalistic approach, with guests that I feel are, changing the game in the zeitgeist, as well as talk to people that are experiencing some of this paranormal phenomena. And ufology will be a huge topic here because as I go down the rabbit hole of mystery, I plan on taking you with me in hopes that we will all learn something new and come closer to the answers you and I both are seeking. I would like to ask you to please email me at contact@lightingthevoid if you ever have something you want to share, or guest suggestions, or even complaints. It will be much appreciated and not taken for granted, that I can assure you. I want to give a special thanks to Dave Scott for the opportunity to do this, and to Dave Cruz for recommending me for this honor. All right, now that we got all the gooey, touchy stuff out of the way, tonight we'll be speaking to who I feel is the perfect guest for this debut for me here on Spaced Out Saturday. And in a synchronistic event, also was the same guest that was there first when Dave Cruz started Spaced Out Saturday. Brad Olsen is joining us tonight. Now, Brad Olsen's passion for writing goes far beyond his book publishing business or the online content he produces. His books have reached a wide audience across the country and around the world, and have won numerous awards. His work has been reviewed in top publications, and he continues to lecture nationwide on various subjects. He has appeared on dozens of television and nationally syndicated radio shows over the course of 2 decades. Yet for all the fanfare, Brad Olsen likes to spend time with his friends and family while attempting to be outdoors as much as possible. Now, although the professional task of book publishing occupies most of his time, Brad is also the founder and event producer of the How Weird Street Fair in San Francisco, the city where he currently resides. Between writing online and print publication articles, new book chapters, and posting on social media, he also manages various websites, does marketing work, special sales fulfillment, administrative tasks, manages various projects with outsourced collaborators, and produces one of the largest festivals in the city. So while wearing his publisher's hat, he makes the stated goal of only releasing the kinds of books he would value owning himself, which incorporates thought-provoking and critical content, and with a wide appeal to readers. They're great books. I've been reading them myself. Now, his publishing business, CCC Publishing, is distributed by Independent Publishers Group. Now, I've always wanted to interview this man, and now I get to pick his brain finally. Welcome, Brad, to Spaced Out Saturday. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Joseph. It's good to be here. Good to be back on Spaced Out Saturday. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I couldn't have picked a better person to pick for this, because I think that after reading Modern Esoteric, and I'm going into Future Esoteric, all of the stuff that have just bogged me down my entire life about the mysteries of everything you talk about. So really, there's no amount of time, like I was telling you before the show, that we have to cover everything. I wish we did. I wish we could just sit and talk for hours and I could pick your brain. So I want to start with the important stuff real quick, but you do have a conference coming up. I want to talk about that. If you could tell us where that's located. It's coming up real short, like in a few days, right?
Yeah, just next weekend I'll be in Sedona, Arizona for the Cosmic Wave event. at the Sedona Community Center. So if anybody's out in the northern Arizona area, come on out next weekend. I'll also have a table with some of my books and signing and doing most of my talks on Sunday, I believe. But I might be on a UFO panel or something like that. And I'm also doing another event in Florida in February in the Orlando area, and another one back in Sedona in April around 420 in Cottonwood, Arizona. And I've already signed the contract for Contact in the Desert in early June. They're moving the venue now to
I heard that.
Palm Springs, to the Renaissance Resort. They were just running out of room and needed more hotel space. So certainly hope them well, and looking forward to doing that and all the other events I speak at.
You don't think that's going to take away from the nostalgia of the event? Because I have heard some controversy about that, a little bit. But I think it's just because, it's been such a long tradition where it's been located. Change is kind of hard for people to get used to. But it sounds like it's something they had to do.
Something they had to do. And yeah, as much as I love that Joshua Tree location, it's very rustic, and they're not able to accommodate everybody that either wants to come to the event or stay there. So it makes a lot of sense that they're doing this.
Right. Well, you know what? Just like I said before, man, I'm really glad you're here. And I wanted to, if you've listened to me at all, I'm going to start with some deep questions, right?
Let's do it, Joseph.
I'm a deep kind of guy, right? So
nice.
I think the common denominator for both books that you wrote, Modern Esoteric and Future Esoteric, is the latter word. Yes. Word that, as much as it gets thrown around a lot, it may still be lacking in understanding by some, So if you had to explain to the listener who wants to understand and define what the esoteric is, what does that mean to you, the word esoteric?
Well, the literal meaning is information that's known and used by a select few amount of people. When that information starts to get out to the general population, the term actually changes and it becomes exoteric, and it's no longer hidden information. So it's much like the true definition of the occult. It just means hidden. And I know the word occult and esoteric sometimes have associations with the dark side, and there is a dark side to this. We live in a world of duality, Joseph, and it's all around us, unmistakable sometimes, but we still have to sift through it and utilize this information as best we can.
That's right. I believe that. And I get afraid to talk about some of these subjects a lot, to be honest with you, because there's such scrutiny about certain subjects that after a lot of the studies I've done, I think there's so much misunderstood. And, I think a lot of people get dragged through the mud, you know what I mean, with some of this stuff because they're, like just say, for instance, a friend of mine that could be a Freemason or something might get dragged through the mud with some, I guess I would say, YouTube beliefs about Freemasonry. And I'm not saying there isn't anything wrong or bad with Freemasonry. Obviously, we talked to Leo Zagami when I was on here before about the infiltration of the mystery schools, but it doesn't hold. Do you think it holds as much power today as it did back then, as a long time ago?
You mean Freemasonry?
Yeah, like the esoteric teachings in the mystery schools as a whole. Back then they had to hide and, keep from getting strung up and stuff. And now, Freemasonry, their lodges have actually declined in membership. And see, I didn't know that till I read your book. They've been kind of falling off.
They have indeed. And my grandfather was a very high-ranking Scottish Rite Freemason. And I could, by birthright, join and pretty much be fast-tracked up to some of the higher levels. I'm not going to do it, but it is interesting to study them and to see that indeed their membership is falling off. However, they operate out of a very need-to-know confine. So we don't really know how many people are joining or how many are at these upper levels and what they're up to. But nonetheless, it is what it is, and they are, by all definitions, a secret society and continue to exert quite a bit of power and influence in the world today. And a lot of the leaders of some of the groups that basically run the show in this country and elsewhere, and we're talking about the Council on Foreign Relations, members of the Trilateral Commission, people who attend the Bilderberger meetings, as well as high-ranking government officials, sometimes judges. They're all Freemasons. So it kind of tells you that they still retain quite a bit of power.
From your studies of Freemasonry, though, do you think that it's possibly, because when I read it, when I read their books, and all their books are, pretty much online, the important ones, and it seems like that these guys, we always want to relate them to UFOs and the secret space program, things of that nature, that they're running the world behind the scenes. And when you read their materials, it seems like that they only want the betterment of the self, the betterment of the planet, and things of a good nature. So it's so confusing out there sometimes when you actually start to research some of this stuff for yourself.
Well, that's a good point. And the motto of the Masons is to take a good man and make him better. And one of their main objectives is to bring in more light. So on the surface, it sounds, hey, that sounds like a pretty good plan. Maybe, Joseph, you and I should think about membership. But in the nature of being a secret society, and by being a secret society, they do collect and have their own esoteric teachings.
Right.
But they also have positions of power. And this is why I think we need to question what they're up to. Because it's not just the Shriner circuses and the Masonic Children's Hospital that they do as an outward extension of who the Masons are, but they have a lot of other dealings with world governments, nothing less.
Yeah, true that. And I was reading Modern Esoteric. You were talking about. I don't want to give anybody's book away, but man, I got to tell you, you guys need to go out and grab these books. And I'm not just saying that to say that to pet Brad. There is anyone that wants to know anything about the esoteric and the secret programs, the secret history of humanity, everything. Even if you think you know a lot, I really think you should grab Brad's book and go through them, because I'm so happy to have them myself, man. There is a lot of information in there. It doesn't seem that you could have collected all this in one lifetime, to be honest with you.
It took me several years to do each one of the books, and there's no giving this book away because, as you said, there is so much material and so much content. We could barely scrape the surface with the time we have to cover them both.
Here's the thing, though, that I want. It's fun to be controversial. It's fun to be polar, especially on radio, right? It's fun to stir up opinionated subjects and get people to banter back and forth, and we're going to do that here. I promise you we will. But you speak about something I feel is pretty important in your book, solipsism. And I want to say that I've always thought, as I was, through meditation and trying to learn awareness and stuff, that you get this vision of like you're kind of overlooked. It doesn't matter who you are, your intelligence level, where you come from. You're only seeing the world from your eyes and your senses. So you get this belief that it's all about me and my beliefs, and I understand things and people don't. And it's like everyone's kind of looking down upon the earth from their own little tower. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what solipsism is. And that's why we have to be aware of it and make an effort not to fall into that trap.
Yeah, that's pretty, it was one of the first things that you put out in the book, and I thought, well, that's really cool, because it's almost like you knew, hey, some of these subjects I'm fixing to get into are quite controversial. So if you don't understand what solipsism is, then you're going to take an opinion. You're going to get sided real quick about some of this stuff,
Yeah, one of the reviewers of Modern Esoteric said the introduction was very strong and really set the stage for the kind of content and material that I was bringing forth, which is by its nature very controversial. And that's the nature of esoteric subjects. It is not what's being told to us via the nightly news or by government officials or even in our educational systems. This has been the information that has been hidden, squandered, collected, guarded fiercely, and is not meant to get out to the general population. But as we were talking in the setup, Joseph, this is the age of the veil being raised. This is when the curtain's being drawn. This is when we see the little old guy behind the controls like in The Wizard of Oz, and we start to see things for what they really are. And these subjects is what it's all about. These are the great mysteries that have perplexed humanity for so many eons, as well as what we're dealing with in this modern age, as well as projecting into the future. And just if I could give the distinction between the two, modern esoteric is, at the beginning, it's book one, the antediluvian civilizations, the lost continents, the ancient alien material, and I've been on that show a few times. And it goes into the secret state, which is where I'm at on my radio show every Wednesday. I'm reading chapters and then having a discussion, and I'm in that section of modern esoteric, and then finally it goes into the thrive section. So you have the different aspects of who we are leading up to this modern age, where future esoteric takes a forward-looking posture, and that's when I get into all the ET and UFO material, and it ends off in the utopia section, solutions for the new human, the new Earth that we could very easily be experiencing within our lifetime. And that's truly the goal here, that we shouldn't lose sight of the objective, and that is to bring the human race up in the enlightenment quotient, so to speak, that we can reach this prophesized golden age, that we could have a period of abundance and end starvation and end war and start to heal this planet. Yeah. But right now, in this day and age in history, we are truly walking on the razor's edge where it could flip either way. Of course, we want to make it end on a positive note.
It's like we're going through birth pains, isn't it? It seems like.
Oh, yeah, that is. And that's the human race then starting to absorb a lot of this new material. You know, it's really interesting, Joseph. I talk about this at my at conferences a lot, try to bring it up on the shows I do. The age we live in is so incredibly unique and diverse. And that is, we still have Stone Age people that live in the Amazon basin and some of the most remote valleys of Papua New Guinea. And at the same time, we have a breakaway civilization and a secret space program that has been in outer space and some of the planets in this solar system for decades, which of course is not being talked about unless you get into these subjects. And we live in this dichotomy, or we could even go with the normal narrative. We have humans that live in the space station, the International Space Station, and we still have uncontacted Stone Age primitive people living on this planet. Yeah, so we have this
That's so
dichotomy.
Crazy to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And at the same time, if you look at things like the 100th Monkey and how human consciousness could just go through this great blossoming where everybody starts to grok these subjects, even if they have no exposure to it, we could see that moment in our lifetimes. And that would be one of the greatest shifts of consciousness in any planetary system. That's why there's so much attention on Earth right now, because this is such a pivotal moment in our history.
Man, I think I read a story the other day where a man visited one of those tribes. I forget, man, I wish I could remember where it was, but he's never came back. Nobody knows what happened to him. I'll have to find that and talk to you guys about that later. It's pretty interesting. But sticking on the book, The Modern Esoteric, and we definitely are going to talk about, your viewpoints on, secret space programs. I want to get to that, your viewpoint on cover-ups, things like that, because there's some things that are happening now, such as, Tom DeLonge stuff and some things that, they're pretty controversial. So we got to be careful, I believe, about what boards or what boats we just jump on, but
sure.
before we get into that, there's a great question that all our minds, Brad, I think, everything that we know of, everything has a purpose that we know of. The visible to the invisible, most things that we have discovered can be explained, or the things that can be explained scientifically for the most part, have their purposes. So why is it that the purpose of the human being is such a great mystery? Why is it so perplexing for some?
Well, it's the human experience. And as I said, we live in this period with such incredible diversity from everything in between those primitive uncontacted tribes to humans that are living in outer space. And you and I are pretty well privileged to have the life where we could have radio shows and write books and produce street fairs and choose our profession. I traveled around the world in my formative years. In fact, I started out as a travel writer, and most of my books are travel guides. 3 books in the Sacred Places series, 2 an Extreme Adventure series. My first book, World Stompers. I spent 3 years on a self-financed trip around the world. And I'll tell you, when you go to places where there is starvation and people dying on the streets and extreme poverty, that leaves a lasting impression. And to me, those 3 years abroad were the better education than my 5 years at university. They're very complimentary in many ways. It's made me the person I am, but it was such a wake-up call to see how the other half lives. And most don't have a choice on how they want to live their lives. So give thanks every day. You at least have some semblance of controlling your own destiny.
I wonder sometimes, Brad, if that, and I know we're getting really deep here, but I wonder sometimes that if we knew, if the human purpose was uncovered and we knew the reality of everything, that it would take all the fun out of it. But, because the journey might be what's important, not the reality behind it.
That's a great observation, Joseph. And I'll tell you why. Learning about different advanced civilizations, because this is what we could become even a few hundred years from now. Keep in mind, Star Trek was human race in 350 years. Benevolent travelers reaching new destinations on a voyage of discovery. You can't get more advanced than that, really, as a race. So obviously, in the Star Trek scenario, they've done away with money. You never see money exchange in any episode of Star Wars.
Right, yeah.
They have introduced free energy. They have craft that can travel at the speed of light. So they've also conquered time travel, presumably, because they are interchangeable. And they live a life where they're at complete peace. So war is a long ago thing of the past. And to your point, if we were to be in that scenario where crime basically goes away, where it's a world of abundance, it could be somewhat of a boring existence compared to how sharp the duality is now in our lives and how hard it is on some people. Now, it's not to say it wouldn't be a bad thing to get rid of all the pain and suffering in the world, but I think in a long-term scenario, it could get kind of boring in such a way that we're not challenged in the same way we are. And this kind of gets into past life stuff, which I do cover in Modern Esoteric and Reincarnation chapter, and who we are, body, mind, and spirit, human beings, and understanding the chakras and so forth. It's a bit more than we're talking about here, but the point is we do want to achieve this period, but we also want to keep our lives interesting and not get to the point where AI is being the judge and jury and making all our decisions and we go along with it. That the human experience is thus that we participate and we stay on top of the game and we are the masters of the robots and never the other way around.
It is moving that way pretty fast, though,
it seems to be. It's something we definitely have to be vigilant and keep an eye on, because if that were ever to get out of control, as well as AI, we'd be in big trouble. And these are some of the subjects I'm going to cover in the third and final book in the Esoteric series, which will be out in 2019, that I'm writing right now, called Beyond Esoteric, The Ultimate Journey. And these are subjects that go beyond the pale of what any 19th century esotericist could ever dream we would be encountering in 100, 200 years from the time that term was widely used. So to go into this new transhumanistic world and to understand all these subjects that have been in the truth embargo and withheld from us, it's truly mind-boggling. And for my part, has taken me the better part of a decade to chronicle these chapters and this material.
You know, on Lighting the Void, I felt like I was such a crazy man for bantering about artificial intelligence and the use, especially the use of autonomous weapons, that I felt like, you know, some crazy guy talking about some great conspiracy that wasn't real, you know. But I don't know why I felt that way, because when I looked into it, there's several humanitarian movements right now, including, you know, people like Elon Musk and such, that are going even to the United Nations to stop this before it happens. And you know what really scares me about it, Brad, the most is, and I think, you know, for you, the listener, that probably scares you too, we all know how fast technology moves. You know, it moves almost like faster than compound interest.
Well, remember Moore's law, which is that technology will advance upon itself every 18 months and basically double its capacity every year and a half. And for the most part, Moore's law has proven true with the rise of computers and the internet. We're seeing more and more capacity on the internet, more and more things you can do. Computing power continues to grow. Look, we all carry around mini computers in our hands, these smartphones, which is like Dick Tracy technology to someone in the 1950s, and more computing power in even one of the most basic smartphones from 5 years ago than they had at NASA during the Apollo missions. More computing power now. So it's just incredible that we're living to see all this stuff transpire right before our very eyes.
Yeah, man, and they make it so affordable too. I mean, phones are expensive, but you got these payment plans and everything's great, right? So they're marketing to pretty much the average income can get any, you know, because I say that because back in 99, I remember my father buying a computer, 1999, purchased a computer that doesn't even have half, not even close to a third of the computing power of my phone, and he paid well over $2,000 for it, you know. So if you think about that, that's not that long ago. So what's it going to be like 10 years from now? The self-driving car stuff. I mean, I don't know if you've ever studied Ray Kurzweil, but his predictions are quite scary. But if you look at the parallels of what he's saying or what he's predicting and what's been happening, some of that stuff's quite true. You know, I'm not here to fear-monger anybody, but, you know, fear has its purpose too. And I think not just saving the planet, you know, the environment, but we also got to watch out what's controlling us. I mean, come on. Facebook, Google, both, they're creating AI. It created its own language in a matter of, I don't know, I think it was a month or so, and that scared them enough to shut it off.
Yeah.
Why is that not being talked about? I think it is being talked about now more, though. You know, at first I thought no one cared, but that scared me to death, man.
Yeah. I very well have read Kurzweil's material. I've seen him speak before, and he speaks about the singularity, that moment when computing power actually matches and surpasses a human's mind. And that singularity is meant to occur around 2030, I think is the latest dating. So we're only talking, New Year's Eve is less than a month away now, 12 years from now. So it's just incredible to think what's changing and how fast. And I'd also like to remind the listeners, if you have read Isaac Asimov, he wrote a lot about robotry. The first law of robotry is thou shalt never harm a human. And we've already crossed the Rubicon because there are now drones that can identify a target on their own using AI and kill people. So we've already violated the first law of robotry. So we're in it right now. It's happening. And let's hope it doesn't get out of our control. And I'm glad that people here in Silicon Valley, where I'm at, are finally starting to speak up, because so many of them are leaders in the field of technology and we are ushering in this age. And as I mentioned, with so many other people around the world who have no choice in their life, they're just going to have to take what they get. So it's really up to the leaders of today to make these decisions and call the warnings out like you're doing, and making us aware that this is a very real threat if it gets away from us.
Yeah, I'm not one for, fear mongering or fear porn or whatever people call it, but you're a broadcaster too, right? You've got a radio show now, and you think, well, that carries a little bit of responsibility, even if it doesn't matter how many listeners you got, to warn people about certain things. I mean, that's what broadcasters have been doing since the beginning of the time, but I never thought that we would be here this fast. It was always like, watching Terminator and RoboCop, and it was such a fantasy thing. And the moment, I think it was like 2004 when I saw those quadricopters, the little bitty helicopters that could fly in formation, pretty much what you see in those drones you're talking about now. Yep. Way before the drones came out on the open market were little quadricopters that could fly around, fly in perfect formation, move through buildings, move around buildings, do perfect figure eights, balance sticks on their heads as they flip them back and forth, things I can't even do with my fingers. And, I was thinking, it just crossed my mind, what if you put a turret gun on that thing and programmed it, well, that's just crazy thought. I don't know why I'm thinking about that. But look, here we are now,
Yeah, here we are now, sounding the warning. And let's hope people don't listen to this in the archives in some bygone era and say, why didn't we heed the warning when we still had a chance?
Yeah, it makes you kind of feel like you're on that old shortwave radio like Orson Welles or whatever, trying to warn the planet after the fallout, It's too late, But before we go down that road, I want to stay a little bit with the self, I guess the gnosis or the self-awakening, which you're right, I think is happening to everyone all over the planet in their own way. But what I've always wondered is about the human will. Like, why do archetypal stories choke us up when we watch them on TV? Like, I watch Rocky all the time. The toil that man goes through to get to his dream, and then when he comes into his moment of glory, right? I'm always thinking, well, this could be me. And that chokes everybody up. It doesn't matter if it's just Rocky or a different story. And I wonder if that comes from, what's really behind the curtains of our being,
Yeah, and what you're touching on is Joseph Campbell type material about the myth, the hero and the hero's journey. And basically, if you break down just about any Hollywood action film, they all follow the same formula. They all go with, here's the hero, here's the bad guys, here's the bad guys winning, here's the hero almost out of luck and about to be defeated, and he makes a brilliant move and counters the bad guys and blows up the Death Star. And there, I just gave the example of Star Wars, and they pretty much all follow that model. And it goes back to Joseph Campbell's talking about this hero's journey, and why it resonates with all of us is because we're all on our own hero's journey. That's actually what we're doing in these lives of ours, in these human bodies. I like the bumper sticker. You're not a human having a spiritual moment. You're a spirit having a human experience. Right. And that's what it is. That is the human journey. It's us humans having that spiritual journey.
So maybe like the soul or the consciousness or whatever you want to call it it's only a concept to them, a beautiful concept, but they can, when they live it out through a human experience, it's something much more powerful. It's pretty cool to think about, actually.
I was a marketing major. I wanted to get into advertising in college, and I got my degree in that. And I always remember some of the things in marketing and in advertising, the 3 selling points that never go out of style. Maybe I should see if you can guess what they are, that just keep coming back. What are the subjects that keep getting used that people never get tired of?
I mean, I know for a fact in the subject matter in sales is if you're just wanting to find a product to sell, it usually has something to do with health, wealth, or relationships, you know?
Yeah, those are three aspects of this, but I guess I didn't explain it quite right. But the three things that never go out of style is anything to do with babies, children.
Okay. I got
Talking
you.
like advertising, print media, and broadcast media. Sex always sells. And beautiful women, beauty in us. And that's kind of part of the sex thing too, and kind of the baby thing too. But that's why it continues to recur. And I think this is also part of the hero's journey, that there are aspects that we all identify with and we all ascribe to, and we all associate ourselves with living that aspect. And maybe that's why capitalism can either be the American dream or the American nightmare, because it gives us this carrot and a stick, and we're always grabbing, we're always trying to strive to have better things and be in higher esteem from the people around us, yet it always just seems so terribly just out of reach.
Yeah,
and that's why I have a love-hate relationship.
It doesn't line up with the experience, you know, a lot of times. You know, the message you're being broadcasted is, you can have this too if you'll just buy this or whatever, or you just do this. That's all, you know, and you get this stuff and your experience is totally different, and you're thinking, what do I got to do here? You know, you just keep trying over and over again. I see what you're saying.
And that's why I have such a love-hate relationship with advertising. I love to scrutinize and look at the bare bones of what it really is, and even the subliminal aspects of advertising below the threshold of consciousness. There was this very popular book when I was in college called Subliminal Seduction. It was a thick paperback book, and we read it in some of my advanced marketing class. In fact, I even did my thesis paper on it. And there is some validity to it, that it does work on certain people if you are already inclined to buy, say, Cutty Sark whiskey instead of Jack Daniels. You might be looking through a magazine and see advertising that looks really appealing, and you don't know why. But if you were to look at it really closely, you might read the word sex in the ice cubes, things like that. So it only really works if you have a proclivity towards that particular product. If you hate drinking whiskey, it'll have no effect on you. But they've done other things, such as, and this kind of goes into the MK Ultra side of things, where they have put subliminal frames, like one frame. A movie goes at 30 frames a second. They'll just put in one frame of Coca-Cola, or one frame of popcorn, or one frame of Tutti Frutti candy. And sure enough, they had measured that enough people would go up to the counter and buy those products after those frames played. So they do know that subliminal advertising works, but again, kind of in a limited way, that you would have to already have a proclivity to consuming those products for it to work.
Man, that kind of upsets me thinking about that stuff. Well, I mean, really, like my whole thing since I started this was to get people to understand the esoteric, the subconscious, the power of it, and how not only are people using you, you know, and you're, let's just say, I'm not saying everyone has a lack of knowledge of it, obviously not, but how they're using that against you, and also how you can use that in, I would say, a magical and mystical sense to empower yourself, you know. And I don't want to give people the wrong impression. I'm always worried about that, because people are like, what do you do, rituals and meditation, and you do all this stuff? What are you, some kind of witch or something? I'm like, well, you know, I understand the subconscious a little bit, and then I feel like I'm just spinning in circles trying to explain it, you know.
Right. Well, you shouldn't have to spin in circles to explain it, because those who are ready to grasp the message will do it wholeheartedly and be very grateful that you help them understand what it is that they're grasping. Those that are still in a state of ignorance or in cognitive dissonance, and what you're talking about goes against their core beliefs, will lash out at you. They will attack the messenger. It's an age-old human response. But for those who are on an evolutionary trajectory who do understand that the ultimate goal of the human experience is called enlightenment. And the Buddha gave us a lot of great messages and information on how to achieve that. That when you realize how much there is to know, that every day should be devoted to learning at least one thing, probably multiple things, because it is that kind of world we live in where there's just so much to take in and so easy to waste our time. That's why there's so much of the bread and circuses in our world today, so many distractions, to watch the football game, to play video games, to
it makes you feel
follow
like you're
celebrity
missing out.
gossip,
Everything,
anything to throw us off the path.
Yeah.
Because they don't want humans to be on the path. What would they do with the human race that becomes enlightened? Well, they would certainly lose all their control. That's just to start with, and then they would find themselves in probably a prison cell or worse. So it is up to us to sift through and separate the wheat from the chaff here, because there is so much garbage out there, but also so much great information that we can learn and grasp. I like the old saying, we're drowning in information, but we're starving for knowledge. And that's what it's really all about, is accumulating knowledge and becoming wise. And that's the one good thing about getting older, is you do become wiser. And the Buddhists would say, for each of us, the best things that we could think of doing in our everyday life is to be compassionate, have charity, and be wise. So there is nothing wrong with people getting smarter. And if you can help them do that, Joseph, this was a lesson I learned when I was teaching English in Japan. It was like right out of college. I was still in my 20s, still basically having a great time, going out drinking and partying, dating a lot of people. And I didn't really grasp the whole notion of being a teacher. It's a big deal in the Far East. I was an English teacher, and I'm just basically reading out of a workbook. I mean, it seemed very rudimentary at the time, but it wasn't until I had a very wise student, a very good English speaker, and got to know him. And he says, well, you have to understand, in the East, it's what's known as a sensei. And a sensei means teacher. English teacher, ego no sensei in Japanese. To be a teacher is you are imparting your wisdom to others. And another notion from the East is karma. And when you do that, you're accumulating good karma. When you help people, you accumulate good karma. When you're hurting people, bad karma. I think we've all heard that before. But that stuck with me for a long time, and that being a teacher in whatever capacity, even if you're taking a lot of arrows for some of these subjects and criticize, and we've all been trolled before, Joseph. I know the feeling too. You just have to weather the storm and keep going, and knowing that there is very good fortune and very good karma in being a teacher. And I don't mean fortune by making a lot of money, because unfortunately that doesn't always come along with it. But I mean good fortune in your aiding and assisting your fellow humankind in advancing.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too when you're I'm experiencing this myself, when you're doing what you love for a living. I can honestly say that, running a radio network and 2 radio shows and just doing that full time, man, I'm barely scraping by with the support I get. But you know what? To me, that's better than barely scraping by doing something I can't stand. And I don't get – it was such an eye-opening experience to me. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sovereignty. This is something that I feel that we have lost big time, and that we're losing our own power to where we believe that there's no way that we can do the things we love or be who we want to be, because we're so trapped in this system. And I think that the power of that thought is way more false than the actual reality of the statement, You
make a good point, and this ties into our free will. Sovereignty is a very important word, and if people don't completely understand what it means, please look it up in the dictionary, because it means you are an independent, free-thinking, free-willed individual. who does not have the shackles of some kind of consensus reality telling you what reality is. You, as a free thinker, can determine that using your own ability to use your cognitive skills and critical thinking to understand this material, because it is complex. There's a lot of roadblocks. There's a lot of disinformation that's been put out there. They are not making it easy to do the kind of work that we do, Joseph. And believe me, I've been in book publishing now for over 20 years, and it's just getting to the point where it's working out. I'm not sure if you know, but I publish Leo Lion-Zagami's books and work with him and other authors and stuff. So I've been doing this full-time, full power for over 20 years. And as I said with my friend William Henry one time on the set of Ancient Aliens, it's just what we do. What are we going to do? Change gears right now in the middle of our lives and do something else? No, you just keep going forward. You're just doing what you do best. And I would tell you, doing what you do is good karma. It is being a sensei. And it is helping people understand these very complex problems. So don't think about changing it 1 minute.
And, there is something behind the scenes that helps you along the way, I think, that lets you know that when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or that you love to do, you may struggle, but your needs will get met, I believe, if you really have faith in it, because I can tell you for the past 3 months, right when I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to go out and get another corporate job and hang this radio thing up, I promise you, you can ask Dave Cruz about this. The minute I start thinking that, I'll get a donation or something, or a sponsor may holler, and it's not it's not life-changing stuff, but it's enough to keep me going. Like, here you go. This is going to get you down the road a little bit more, And
Beautiful.
That's weird, isn't it, how that works? And it's worked several times in a row. So it's not like God comes down and sits in front of me and tells me, hey, you're doing the right thing while he's shaking his finger. It's the stuff that we're not really paying attention to.
It is, but it's also because you're a person who tells the truth. You have integrity. You're doing the right thing. Hey, look, everybody makes mistakes. I'm not saying that everything I've written about or talked about is 100% true.
Sure.
I get caught into the trap sometimes as well, but I'll be the first to admit my mistakes and quick to rectify it if I know I'm wrong. And that's what we have to do in this field. Conspiracy research is like the wilderness of mirrors. You get so many reflections and different distractions in those mirrors. It's really hard to know what's real and what's not, especially when we go down into the UFO and extraterrestrial rabbit hole. That's when it gets really challenging. But back to your setup piece about being the complete human and using some of these knowledgeable items we can from psychology to our benefit, such as solipsism, and basically not allowing our ethnocentric view of just what we see is our only reality. That's why the subtitle of Future Esoteric is The Unseen Realms. And there's a whole book about it, because there's so much that we cannot see that we have to use these reasoning tools of our mind. And by the way, our mind, we're talking about the singularity, is so powerful. And to think that we still have 90% of our brain and 90% of our DNA that still can be encoded and fully understood, as well as our pineal gland, which has been calcified from all the fluoride and other toxins put into our body that collects around that. If we were able to fully function our pineal gland, we would be superhumans. Like in the book Autobiography of Yogi, each chapter is a different yogi exhibiting these incredible abilities on a human level. We have that innate within all of us. We just have to learn how to tap into that. And that is part of what the complete human is really all about.
Real quick before we go into the first intermission here, I want to ask you mentioned they, and that is the thing that complexes me too. We got about 3 minutes before the break, but in your opinion or in your studies, who is the they that is controlling us and is keeping us from this information?
Well, in 3 minutes.
Well,
let's just call them by the different names they are, and maybe in the second hour we can get into it. Exactly. In history, they've been the Illuminati. In more recent times, we call it the Cabal, secret government, the 1% of the 1%, global elite. And I would even say that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are merely the colonels and the captains on this hierarchy scheme. And to quote Bill Cooper, you put the aliens in the middle of stuff, you get all the answers.
That's right.
The real generals of this planet,
the glue,
could be these reptoid ETs that operate in a fourth dimensional way that we have no comprehension of. So the they is a very complex question, but in most cases when I say they, it is the human controllers. But some of the top may be getting their marching orders from a malevolent ET source. I say we can't rule that out.
Yeah, Eric Markham asked in the chat room, can we decalcify the pineal gland? He wants to know. And I think that's what we can, when we come back, I'll ask Brad. I think Brad probably knows a little bit about that. And we're going to get into some more subjects that he writes about in his books, modern esoteric and future esoteric. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back. This is Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we'll be back with Brad Olsen.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. This is Spaced Out Saturdays with host Joe Rube. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void. And if you want to call into tonight's show, dial 501-777-5631. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, from the deep south of Arkansas, here is Spaced Out Saturday host Joe Rube.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're with Brad Olsen, who's joined us. And thanks for listening. If you're just tuning in from any of our affiliates, thank you all for listening. If you can join us in the chat room, come join us. And here in a little bit, I'll open up the phones if you want to call in. The number's 501-777-5631. Don't forget, tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio, Elizabeth Anglin gets nerdy with Sherry Baker and Eric Markham on Cosmic Passport. Same time, same channel. And then Monday night, we kick off another week of Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Now, before we left the break, we were asked a question by Eric in the chat room about, decalcifying the pineal gland, because according to your information that, we've pretty much trashed this thing with all the stuff we're taking in and, I guess the water. How can we fix that? How can we clean it?
Yeah, I wouldn't blame people for trashing it knowingly. We have been poisoned with sodium fluoride in the water, which is shown to go right to the pineal gland and put like a white calcification around it, basically rendering it useless and closed. So what you can do, first of all, to start by meditating, by visualizing it in the center of your two hemispheres. And by the way, I have a chapter in Modern Esoteric called the pineal gland in the control section. And I just flipped it right open now, and I'll read you a couple things here real quick, because this is very important, and this is also part of becoming a complete human. A lot of it has to do with starting to understand this Kundalini energy, because by awakening the pineal gland, that is at one of the top centers. The Kundalini is this energy within all of us that is also basically shut down, that in Eastern traditions, it's very well known. So basically, there are some toning exercises that I have in the book that work in Eastern traditions. There are ways such as going out in sunshine. I mean, we should do that anyways. Try to get to, I think, at least an hour every day if you can, if it's sunny out, to get some sunshine on your face. You can also change your eating practices. Sodium fluoride is known to be in the tap water, so stop drinking tap water. The Berkey filters are really good at getting fluoride out if you have fluoridated water in your community. Give up the fluoride toothpaste. Move over to organic fruits and vegetables. Sometimes the pesticides can have fluoridated water on them, or other chemicals that are not good for the pineal gland. And lastly, you can detox. And doing detox using supplements, stimulants in your life. I'll just name a few that are good to take anyways. Chlorella, spirulina, blue-green algae, cilantro, iodine, vitamin C, niacin, ginseng, the D vitamins as well as K vitamins, and just exercise every day and take care of your body. And then a lot of these things will start to correct themselves, and you'll not only be healthier, but you'll be happier in your life, and you'll look better. You'll be more attractive. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's true. And, I feel bad about saying we're trashing our pineal glands. I didn't mean like we're doing it on purpose. Obviously, we can't do anything about it. I feel like I was telling you during the break, I've got my own guilt about all this, man, because the more I'm learning about the GMOs and all of the stuff that we're doing to our bodies, it's hard to break when it's one thing if you got, let's just say, one habit, or if you got two, but if you've got like 3 or 4, maybe possibly even 5 bad dieting problems, it's not easy just to stop all of that, man, because I've tried it before. You go into a period of detoxification and misery. It's really rough,
It's true. And a lot of people don't have access to good supermarkets or farmers markets or places to get really good food. But I have to say, you got to find a way. And a really easy way, which I employ every day, is to make smoothies and even include things that are really hard to eat normally, such as chia seeds or flax seeds, as well as kale and spinach. You can put it all in there, as well as the spirulina, and just put a whole bunch of fruit in there, and you will get more of the fruit flavor than anything else. And you're absorbing, you're taking in all these superfoods as well. And in the Thrive section of Modern Esoteric, I do get into much more of how we can help our bodies out. And you help your bodies out, you help your immune system out, it'll take care of everything. You don't need vaccines. You don't really need to go to the doctor anymore. You don't need to take the allopathic medicines. Our immune system is incredibly robust and able to take on just about anything we throw at it. But a dirty, polluted body, you're not giving the immune system what it needs to do its job.
Yeah, and that even, if you get into the deep studies of alchemy, you could really see how it taps into your spiritual nature and how it affects it as well, too, Well, the puffers and stuff, they get into physical, I guess what you call physical or chemical alchemy, and you can see that there's a lot of little bitty things have so much power against us,
Yeah, absolutely. And living a clean eating lifestyle like this. And look, I'm no angel. Every once in a while I'll have a burger or something. But for the most part, it's like the Buddha said, just take the middle path. Do what's right most of the time. Sub one of those meals out where you would eat meat with a vegetarian meal. Usually you won't even miss it. And that's why this is like esoteric knowledge, because knowing what you can do, very simple things, knowing what superfoods are, you ask a nutritionist, they'll know all about it.
Right.
But that's their esoteric wisdom. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So when we look at it in a general perspective, this is part of it, because this is what makes us the stronger human and more capable to use our perception and clear us out, to do a detox, open the pineal gland and let that start doing some work.
Interesting stuff there. I'm definitely going to dive into that a little bit more myself, because I've got some bad habits, brother, when it comes to food. I grew up in the South, man, and it was all about flavor and soul food, man. It didn't matter, with that, as well as, the occasional soda pop. And when you look into soda pop, you're talking about tastes so good, but it's so poisonous, man.
It is. Just sub it for juice.
Right.
That's a real easy one right there.
Yeah. Good point.
Just drink a juice instead of a soda. Have a salad every day. It's a really good thing. But make these fruit smoothies. You don't even have
Smoothies
to eat
are
a
good.
salad. You could put it all in your smoothie, in your blender, mix it all up with some fruit juice. I'm sipping on mine right now. It can sub for a meal. And that's the other thing is the food we eat is the fatty food. As you mentioned, GMOs are in the food, all the other chemicals and stuff. It's doing our body such a disservice and getting us out of shape and putting on those pounds. We don't need that at all. We need to stay lean, mean, fighting machine, basically. And we may be coming into a period where we're going to have to be at our strongest to get through it. I think there is going to be a shock coming up in many different ways, and it could play many different roles. But to be as strong as you can possibly be and to have your head on in such a way that you could deal with the lights going off for 2 weeks.
Well,
it sounds like such a simple thing, but I think a lot of people would absolutely freak out. Probably because they don't even have candles or books they haven't read and would know how to occupy their time if their cell phones got shut off.
Are you talking about you think there's going to be an EMP or a pole shift or something that's going to knock all this stuff out, kind of like a Y2K thing maybe, or am I reading you wrong there?
No, you're reading me right. And I am saying absolutely be prepared for something that could come down the pike, perhaps in very short order in the next few months. Even by this Friday, which is the deadline for the government shutdown. So they keep kicking the can down the road, but sooner or later, this is one of the ploys to usher in the New World Order. And I saw David Icke was out here in the Bay Area a year and a half ago, and I had, because I'm in the Producers Club in street fairs and so forth, 2 passes to go to the Symbiosis Festival, which is a great event. I paid money to go see David Icke, to tell you where my priorities are at. And one of the most profound things he said to me in his talk to everybody was that you got to understand the New World Order is going to have to come above ground sooner or later. They're going to have to make their big move. They can't just keep conspiring about all this stuff behind closed doors. There will come a time when they just have to roll it all out, and that time is now. And there may be some counter punches. There may be white hats. There may be some things that Trump's even doing. But until that period comes, we are dealing with a cornered animal in a way. And we all know what happens when animals get cornered. They become very vicious. So I would not be surprised if they pulled out all the punches and possibly even did something like an EMP attack, made it a false flag, pulled it upon ourselves to initiate some kind of martial law, get people into FEMA camps. That is a very real possibility. If the riots happen, do not participate. Stay in a safe place. Surround yourself with friends. And as I mentioned, be prepared. Have, I would say, at least a month's worth of food that you can hang out with. And you know what? If you don't have a lot of money, just go get a 50-pound bag of brown rice and a 20-pound bag of black beans. Guess what? You can survive a year on that stuff. And if you have some spices in your kitchen, you know what? You eat rice and beans for a whole year, I guarantee you'd shed the pounds. You'd probably feel better at the end of all of it by doing a drastic lifestyle change, like that kind of dietary change.
You're
but it'll
serious
keep you
about
alive
this.
and it'll get you through it. I am very serious about this. And I'm reading the writing on the wall that this could be happening right before our very eyes, and they will not. As I said at the top of the show, we are running along the razor's edge, and this could flip back and forth. And it's about time they're going to try to make this move to incite World War III. This is when the New World Order goes above ground. They've been talking about it for centuries, getting things set up and prepared, buying out all our politicians through blackmail, the judges, the police force. The only ones who have not completely sold out is the military. And if the military are the white hats and are willing to do some counter moves, maybe it won't be so bad. But I think at least we're going to have to go through a little bit of rough times. It's kind of like the coldest part of night and the darkest part of night is right before dawn. And it could get really nasty before it gets better. And there's nothing better than just having the peace of mind of being somewhat prepared to get through a couple weeks, hopefully not even that long. You know, and the other thing, it could be something totally natural. It could be, as you mentioned, a pole shift. It could be, not that that is anything that we're setting our watch to, because it happens every 12, 14,000 years. But it could be triggered with earthquakes. We know that HAARP has that secondary power that it can set off volcanoes, things like this. You get the continents moving. It could even be a man-made thing. You know, I talk about the antediluvian civilizations at the beginning of modern esoteric, and it's a pretty good chance that Atlantis had some kind of full-scale thermonuclear war, because all around the world you're finding these vitrified sand, which means literally melted. Nothing can melt sand except something like a nuclear explosion, something human-made, not coming from any natural source. And then you have a lot of evidence for these civilizations also being underwater as well. So we go through cycles here, Joseph. Sometimes they're natural, sometimes they're man-made, sometimes they're man-made and become a natural catastrophe. And I live 20 blocks from the beach, so believe me, I know what a tsunami can do. I was down in Southeast Asia a few weeks after the Sumatra tsunami, and saw completely wiped out villages like Kaulak. So I'm very well aware that being by the ocean could also be a threatening moment. And I just say a meteorite hits the Pacific. We're all screwed. Or anything of that nature, of a natural catastrophe. You know, there's even been an awakening of the San Andreas fault line out here where I'm at. All these rumblings up and down, that's not a good sign. And then you have volcanoes starting to go off in Bali. I've got some friends that live in Ubud, and they're having to evacuate right now. So we saw it with Houston with that hurricane. We saw it in Puerto Rico with Maria, that hurricane. We've seen it in different places. It could be upon us in a blink of an eye. And if you're not prepared, you may be the unfortunate one.
Yeah, it doesn't sound real just listening about it. It sounds, you know, a lot of people, when they listen to David Icke, they think this guy's totally, you know, there's some people that are way into him, and there's some people that think he's just, you know, out there, right? But here's the thing. No one thinks that a tsunami is going to wipe out an entire city, much less go inland further than that, but it happened, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It happened in a matter of minutes. Millions of people died. I mean, it was crazy.
Right.
And I would just say that I know that I'm not supposed to eat meat, but I got to tell you, Brad, living out here in Arkansas in the deep woods, if that happens, I'm going to have to lay some deer down, unfortunately.
Well, I would understand, and you'd be justified in doing that. And by the way, living in Arkansas, that is supposedly one of the safest places on the entire continent.
That's what David
you don't
Meade
have,
says, according to David Meade.
Yeah, you don't have natural earthquakes, although they could occur out on the New Madrid fault line that goes down the Mississippi River. You have, the Ozarks are the oldest mountain range in North America, older than even the Appalachians.
You would think
Of course,
living
much
here I
older
would
than
know
the
that, but
Rockies.
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it is this area where you have springs, you have fresh water, you have, as you mentioned, wildlife and still open natural areas. And in fact, many of the global elite have their own underground shelter. Some of them are out in New Zealand, like Peter Thiel, and others are up in Denver along the Front Range. But others are in the Ozarks. They choose that as their area. And there was a great video, I talk about underground bases. I have a chapter of it in Future Esoteric about all the 130 or more underground bases in this continent of North America. And there's a great video of a guy pulling in to an entrance to an underground base, and he gets a truck driver talking. It's somewhere in the Ozarks. And he's like, "Where are you taking this rig to?" The guy's going underground over 100 miles. And he goes, "That's only as far as I go. There are roads that this rig is going all the way to Maine," he said. And if you look at some of the maps of the underground routes and underground cities, which I reproduce in Future Esoteric, you'll see there is an entire network, and they use free energy because they don't want to pollute their underground cities now, do they? They use maglev trains that travel at Mach 2 speeds between some of these bases. And they don't share this technology with us up here on the surface level. They're more preferring that we just war and poison and kill ourselves and get out of the way. And if you read what the Georgia Guidestone says, they want to get rid of 90% of us. So yes, I think we need to be prepared. And yes, I think this is an imminent threat. And yes, I think it could very easily come before we can progress to a sort of a golden age stage with the human race.
Well, and it wouldn't hurt, no matter what you believe, to be prepared to begin with, because if you're not and something does happen, let's face it, you're going to be out of luck, but, unless you got some friends and family, depending on where you live, So, I mean, I'm with you on that. I think you're onto something. It kind of scares me a little, but fear has its purposes too, right? So you gotta be prepared.
Luck favors the prepared.
That's right.
So they say.
Yeah. Now, real quick, Don asked in the Spreaker chat room, "What's the big deal with meat? Why? I gotta ask." She says, "Why can't we eat meat?"
Well, the big problem with meat now is that it's become industrialized. And you have these giant CAFO lots, these giant feed lots. And here in California, if you go up the I-5, you'll go by one of these giant feed lots at the Harris Ranch, and you can smell it like 20 miles away. Most of the food, most of the meat is basically industrialized. And this goes for as well as fruit and vegetables. But questions about meat. Yeah. We got these incisor teeth.
I was going to ask you about that.
We have a protein-based diet. We need our protein. But what I don't like about it is the way that they're treating the animals in these factory farming scenarios. Chickens only live a matter of weeks sometimes. They're pumping them up with hormones. They're feeding them really bad food. They're giving them food that they wouldn't normally eat. For example, corn being fed to cows. They never ate corn ever. They eat grass, okay? That's why if you do eat meat, just pick what kind of meat you choose, like having open range beef, for example. Now they say that the open range chickens live in these big coops. It's still industrialized farming, but they have one door open on either end where they could step outside if they want to. So that's a little bit of a scam. I really don't like what they've done to chickens with so much hormones and antibiotics that are pumped into them, and the fact that they only live a few weeks, and some of them in confined spaces. Mm-hmm. They've done studies with animals when they're going to slaughter. They know they're going to slaughter. They're freaking out. Their adrenaline is pumping, just like if you and me were going through and knowing we're about to die. You're going to get all pumped up, and that is a residue that remains in the meat. So people need to understand this. Look, I'm not a hypocrite, and I do eat meat myself. I have dabbled with vegetarianism. I've done it for at least 6 months a couple times, and I just try to sub out meals with veggie meals every time I can, and try to keep the meat to just one meal a day, and not like a big juicy steak. That's only a couple times a year I'll do that, just as flavoring. Just like, say, when you get chow mein, okay, there's little bits of meat there. That might be all I eat for the whole day, just that little bit in a chow mein with some other vegetarian sides. I'm not trying to preach to anyone and tell you guys what
I want to know this.
But yeah, if your listener was interested about meat, it's not so much that humans eating meat is a bad thing. It's humans eating toxified meat is a bad thing.
Yeah, and we've raised chickens out here since I was a kid, and I got to tell you,
that's the way to do it.
You can tell the difference. I mean, we even have these chicken pens that you can pick up like a wheelbarrow and move them around, but we let them out all day to just free range, right? And you can see that, you can definitely taste the difference. I mean, it even tastes better. The eggs taste better if you get the eggs from a free range chicken than you would if you go into a store and buy those that are already those big white ones, that and not to mention when you go to these places, these places that feed you meat and these gas stations and stuff, and it's like you got this big fat chicken on a stick, and you're looking at it going, I don't think I've ever seen a natural chicken that size. You must have gotten this off a turkey or a hawk, or this is not a chicken, man. Yeah. So it does. I see what you're saying. They do pump them up full of stuff, and all you got to do to investigate that is get on YouTube and watch what happens to these animals. It's horrifying.
Exactly.
I mean, the natives didn't treat the animals that way. If you killed an animal and ate the animal, it was a sacred thing. It wasn't a small deal. It definitely wasn't done in factories, by the thousands.
No. This is all a very modern phenomenon, the way we're treating animals and the way we're sending the cattle and the pigs to these big feedlots and giving them food that they normally wouldn't eat. And they're very sad animals. If you look at the faces and how they're treated, you can't be a happy animal in that situation your entire life. And I just think that seeps into the meat product itself. And then when you're eating it in a way, you're taking that on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at anything else in biology, when they do autopsies and stuff, there's things that are in the blood and in the brain and other stuff when people die or how they died. I've even read some esoteric stuff by Manly P. Hall where they were getting to alchemical studies where there was certain people that like say this guy studied, I know this sounds really crazy, but studied the skull and brain of a guy that was an axe murderer or whatever, and his head was extremely full of, I think it was mercury or something. So there was some chemical stuff going on there that affected him. How did that happen? Could be what he ate. Could be some fish that he got out of a stream that, we've had that problem here in Arkansas where even the Game and Fish Commission have come down and said, look, don't eat the fish out of this one river. And you're thinking, what? Well, that's because the mercury content. And I'm thinking, why are we even having to worry about that?
Well, why you need to worry about that is because mercury is a neurotoxin.
No, what I mean
and it does not flush out of the body.
We shouldn't have to worry about those types of things if we treated nature the way it was supposed to be treated as something sacred. We wouldn't have to worry about those things,
But you mentioned the Native Americans and how they were in harmony with animals and the natural environment. We don't live that way. No. Right here in the Bay Area where I'm at, we have so much mercury in the bay and this is one of the richest communities in the country, you cannot eat the fish out of the San Francisco Bay because it's so filled with mercury. That's why women in Marin County have a high incidence of breast cancer and other cancers. They couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Well, rich people like to eat seafood, but now the seafood is tainted. So it could be that we're going to become vegetarians by necessity just because eating the animals that are so polluted are doing us a disservice.
You got that right. And I wanted to, get back, just kind of take a few steps back here, because there was a quote in the chat room that I wanted to talk to you about. And when we talk about the esoteric, there is a great polarity between, and when I talk about polarity a lot because I want everybody to know that you can be programmed. You can become extremely polar on subjects, and that's how you become programmed. So there is the great polarity between science, the theory of evolution, and religion and spirituality. But it's always seemed to me, if you study the way the left brain works, the logical brain, the right brain, and how it works, that maybe they're just two sides of the same coin telling the same story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there are the hemispheres of the brain, and both serve their purpose. One's more creative, one's more analytical.
Sure.
You can tell when some people are really super good at calculus and math, and others are really good at art. They're tapping into that hemisphere. That's the stronger trait they have. I mentioned earlier about Buddha and following the middle path. That's always the way. I think the full balanced person is going to know how to do calculus. Even though they don't like to do it in school, they could still figure it out. And they should be artistic. Everybody is artistic. You just have to dabble around with it sometimes and have fun with it. And that's who we are
Right.
moving forward. We're going to have to incorporate all these abilities we have.
There's I really won't mention his name, but a guy that I study under who's a pretty, heavy, and he's a heavy, when I say heavy, he knows a lot about this stuff, and he's a magician, and he explained this to me. He said, parts of the brain, certain parts of the brain are attracted to logic, reason, etc., and other parts of the brain are attracted to, kind of spiritual stuff, stories and fables, liberal arts, things like that. And the whole purpose of him telling me is that the magician understood the purpose of both sides of that coin, and that without the faith or the underlying faith of the archetypes and symbolism and all this stuff, you really didn't have any power as a magician. He even used his Christian upbringing in his magic work. So it was kind of fascinating to me to look at. It was, pretty interesting to see it, because that's a fence that people don't really want it. They pick a side and they kind of stick with it. I'm either science or I'm religion. But, the scientists think that it's crazy to be religious and so forth. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I sound like I'm rambling,
absolutely.
I think.
No, it's fine. I grew up with atheist parents, and they basically said, we're not going to make you go to church. We're not going to enforce anything. You guys just figure it out. To my brother and sister.
That's what I tell my kids.
And we did figure it out. And I'm glad I had that kind of upbringing, because it was like the clean slate. It was the empty chalkboard. And then any time I would have a personal experience, I could put that on my chalkboard, and that's like my fingerprint. It's very unique to me. I've always said that spirituality has to be unique to the individual. That's why religion is pretty much obsolete. It's not going into the spirituality of each person. And if you get into this really deeply, and this is, I touched on it with the body, mind, and spirit material in the esoteric books, that you realize that you are in this spiritual realm as well, and you have abilities that can be tapped into to make us sort of like superhumans, like they portray as superheroes in movies and comic books, having telepathic abilities, being able to predict when somebody's going to call you on the phone, when you think about them and then a second later they call you. These notions of premonition. Things like telekinesis, bending a spoon with your mind. Things like astral traveling, when you're consciously leaving your body and going to different places and checking it out and doing it like you were physically doing it. I can't say I have. I do have lucid dreams, and I am trying to tap into that. I understand how it's done. I think I have to get much more into meditation to be really good at that. But a lot of these things can be trained. And wouldn't it be wonderful, Joseph, if when we were in primary school, we were learning the rudimentary skills of how to do astral traveling or remote viewing? Some people are just born with the ability to pick it up and do it. And others have been employed by the military. Ingo Swann was a remote viewer for the U.S. for a long time. And the Russians have their remote viewers. And we've been spying on each other using remote viewers. This is when it gets pretty intense to think about. But they could basically go see what the Iranians are doing in their nuclear power plant in their underground base, and come back and draw diagrams and say, here's where they're at. This is what they're working on today. With their mind, the power of the mind.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But it's not. It's really not. It's really not. Because I've had my own experiences with it, Brad. I studied Robert Monroe and Thomas Campbell myself, and I've actually had a few of my own experiences. And, a lot of people think when you're in a dream, when you are in a dream state, even a lucid dream state, you have lost a little bit of consciousness. I mean, let's be honest, you have.
Sure. And you're going to lose more and more.
Right.
The trick is when you're in that, what is it? I want to say delta. I may be wrong on that. But when you're in that, it's basically right before you fall asleep.
Yeah.
You're actually in that stage, and that's where the remote viewers can basically step out of their body and go travel consciously to different locations. They've done remote viewing on Mars. They can see what's going on Mars and the dark side of the moon, on the back side of the moon, and things like that. So it's really mind-blowing information. And there's a guy, what's his name? Courtney, help me with the last name if you know it. He's a remote viewer, and they have all these people who have this ability, and they will look at future events and past events.
Haven't heard of him.
Courtney Brown. Courtney Brown is his name, and he works with this institute of remote viewers. So they're able to even look at future events. And basically, and by the way, one of their future events is just this month. In the month of December, they said, for the month of December, there will be blackouts, there will be big protests, there will be riots. They're calling it this month.
Wow.
Okay. Was it the Foresight Institute? But you could look up Courtney Brown, and he has videos on YouTube. You could watch them as well. And there's also technology, and I talk about this in Future Esoteric, this looking glass technology, and this device called the Yellow Cube, which was demonstrated in front of the generals in 1964. And the Yellow Cube was actually given to us. So we have had technology that can access the timeline. Now this goes into the Akashic records and the great long march of history on this planet, but it even goes beyond this planet. It can go to our solar system's history as well as outside of our solar system. Because everything that has happened, there is an exact record for it. And with the proper technology, you can use it. And you can go back and we can look at Dealey Plaza when Kennedy got assassinated and freeze frame where every single bullet came from. And what if this technology was on our smartphones one day? Talk about a killer app. I call it the Yellow Cube app. That we could freeze frame Dealey Plaza. Hey, look, there's a guy in the sewer pipe shooting. Look at up on the overpass of the shooter. Hey, there, the grassy knoll. All conspiracies would be game over.
I asked
Everything
that to
would
Thomas
be
Campbell.
discovered.
That was the one, because, he's the NASA physicist, that helped Robert Monroe come up with the hemisync technology when they were going out of body and doing things. And I asked him about that, the Akashic records and everything. I said, Are you telling me that I could go back and see the actual event of what happened there? And he was like, absolutely. I mean, this guy gets paid to do all of the testing for our nuclear defense systems. I mean, he's he's a pure scientist. He's not, he believes that this is a virtual reality, but the biggest point I'm trying to say is that he said that we could do this. We could go to the pyramids and find out who's there right now, what's going on, and you could even test it scientifically, just get on Google and see who was there at the pyramids, or if somebody took a picture. This is the kind of stuff a NASA physicist does day in and day out, and it's amazing that we're not talking about this more. I know we are, but it's not like mainstream, you don't see it on Channel 7 News.
And that's why it's an esoteric subject,
right?
Because it's not being talked about, and you have to basically find a person from NASA with integrity who is willing to go on the record and make these claims. And what's so fascinating about this looking glass technology, which if you think about it, humans have had for over 50 years, and looking back on an exact event, you can do it with very exact precision. But using it to look into the future is nothing but a series of probabilities. So it's somewhat obscure when you try to use it looking into the future. And history moves like a river. A river goes where a river is going. You can make diversions, you can create a little stream, but the bulk of the river is going in a certain direction. And for humankind, it is the direction of having this enlightenment of the human race, of us entering a golden age. It is our destiny. It's much like evolution. It is where we're going and headed. Is all that can happen is the cabal can put up blocks, can put up a dam, can put up creek diversions and try to slow that river down. But it's still going to go to where it's going to go. And they have been using this looking glass technology to try to create a future of their liking. And unfortunately, many of them are psychopaths and would like to see the surface world erupt into World War III and depopulate this planet by 90%. That's the kind of depravity we're dealing with some of these leaders, or sometimes they're nameless and faceless, and you don't know who they are, but they're pulling the strings. They're the real puppet masters. That's what we have to be vigilant and try to figure out.
Do you think that there's a real science to astrology? The reason why I'm asking you this is because you're talking about viewing probabilities, right? Mm-hmm. Viewing the future timeline. When you look at Nostradamus' books and then you study how magicians used scrying, or they would use the art of scrying and astrology, you think, well, there's no scientific way to explain this, I guess. But then John Anthony West wrote a book called, and I talk about it a lot, A Case for Astrology, where he presents astrology to a courtroom as if he could prove that there's something valid there. And sometimes, Nostradamus, he got the names wrong. Not all of his predictions were right. Same thing with Edgar Cayce, but pretty close. A lot of things were close, a lot of things were wrong. But there's this series of timeline probabilities that you're talking about. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying or what you're talking about.
Yeah, as far as astrology, I do cover it in Modern Esoteric. I have to. It's one of the esoteric fields of study for sure. I think there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that comes with reading your astrological profile, that perhaps some things are aligned with the kind of people we are, what signs we're born into. But again, we could just glom onto that and say, oh, I'm a Leo, so therefore I behave this way and that way. And we just kind of set ourselves up for it. But there's a lot that's going on in the unseen realms. And believe me, I've been freaked out by the Ouija board and I've done the I Ching with incredible
accuracy.
precision.
That's
sometimes.
the most accurate thing I've ever seen is the I
mind-blowing
Ching. Yeah,
accuracy. And where does that come from? And I know that Carl Jung was getting into synchronicity and how sometimes when our thoughts are very, very powerful, when they're focused on something. For example, when Carl Jung was writing about synchronicity, he was describing the Egyptian scarab, which is basically like a beetle that has wings and can fly. And right at that moment, a scarab landed on his windowsill, right when he was at the typewriter typing it up. And it just blew him away. Yeah, just blew him away. But what he would say is meaningful coincidences. And the more that you are open to them, the more that they will occur in your life, like the deja vu experience. Where is that coming from? And when you have it and when you feel it and you experience it, you get that interpersonal feeling with like goosebumps all over. Just, oh, whoa, the heebie-jeebies. Oh, that was weird. Nobody else really feels that, but you do. Where's that coming from? So this is what I really like to explore, because these are the unseen realms, and this is what has been a fascination to the occultists and the esotericists for centuries. And this is really when we start getting into some interesting stuff. And this is also when science starts catching up and giving us some clues as well, such as saying that we live within 13 dimensions. Okay, we can only really experience this dense third-dimensional reality because we're locked into it in these bodies. But in reality, we have the capacity to start tapping into the other dimensions. And what a lot of people are saying right now is we don't really want to get bogged down in the fourth dimensional realm. That is the realm of demonic entities sometimes, or the archonic entities. We're going to make a great leap up to the fifth dimension. That is the evolutionary goal of the human race if we are able to make this great leap forward.
Yeah, in fact, it is one of the driving forces of my existence. What you're talking about, man, the study of consciousness. It's like the biggest thing that I study. I don't know. There's so much to say about it, because when you get into, like I was telling you earlier, the one time that I know that I did come out of my body for real, I was totally conscious. There was a heightened sense of awareness. Colors were brighter. Edges were sharper. I was looking at my body asleep. You know, I went into my son's room and seen it as an alarm clock. You know, I'm checking the times and stuff. I was almost fully conscious, I could say. And I couldn't believe it, you know. I couldn't believe it. But all I did was set intentions to do this. And it was after, you know, reading Robert's books, which I recommend anybody to read those books or listen to them on audio. Please go do that. All the trilogy of Robert Monroe. But it wasn't until, and I'm going to give away a secret here for anybody that's struggling with astral travel, it wasn't until that I've got the audios and the sessions of William Buellman that launched me out of my body. And, you know, Todd Akamesis has said this as well, and a lot of other people that were getting into this and studying. Once they studied it, and then they, for some reason, they studied Robert Monroe and everything. They tried it, didn't work, whatever. But then they went and got William Buellman's material. And I'm not trying to push this stuff here. I don't have any reason to. They started coming out of their body. And you're right. Some people just do it. And I'm extremely jealous of those people.
Well, but also it has to do with the power of our mind.
Yeah.
Let's take a little children's book, The Little Engine That Could. Remember the moral of that story? I try and I'm going to try and I'm going to try and I'm trying. I'm feeling like I'm not going to make it, but I'm going to keep on trying. And then I get there. Whereas if you said, I'm never going to make it, forget it. That's all hoo-ha. No way. I'm not even going to attempt it. Who's going to succeed and who's going to fail? The person that's going to succeed is the one who says, I really want to learn this stuff. I really want to get into this. I'm going to try a little bit of this. I'll try a little bit of that. I'll try a little bit of everything until I can start to get my mind wrapped around this. And an example I often use is, let's say you want to be a black belt in karate. You're not just going to walk into the studio, even if you're in great shape and very limber, learn a few moves. Okay, give me my black belt. It doesn't work that way. You have to work. You have to devote yourself to this study. you have to strive every day, be that little engine that could, and then maybe in a few years or a decade, you get that black belt. And here's what happens. That becomes your power. That is something you worked for and strived for and tried very hard for a long time to get. And now that you have it, it's your power. What are you going to do with it? And hopefully a black belt in karate is going to be benevolent and say, well, I would just use it in self-defense or if I saw someone being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, hands can be a lethal weapon. And judge and jury have identified someone who has that power to kill in their hands. Okay? So it's all about your intention and how you're going to use it once you have it. And that is the true master, is controlling that power and using it in a benevolent way or in service to others. And that's what we all need to strive for in our personal lives as well. As I mentioned earlier, compassion, charity, and wisdom. Real 3 easy things to think about that we can each practice and do every day of our lives. And then you do start to take the role of the master. As you become wiser in life, this is your accumulation. These are people that you have helped, who are then willing to help you in certain ways. This is the karma that you have accumulated in your lifetime doing what you're setting out to do. Now, look, we can all whack ourselves out on drugs and just do absolutely nothing and watch TV and screw off and do nothing with our lives. You can do that. You have that right. Well, maybe not doing the drugs if they're illegal, but you can just blow off life altogether if you want to. And guess what? Then you don't get that power. Then you do not even get close to that black belt or any kind of abilities that you want to set out and achieve. So I like what you said about reading these different books and trying to achieve this and trying to get out of your body, because you're doing what we've been told we can't do by society. And that's why when you preface and say, I think this is going to sound really crazy, to me it doesn't sound crazy at all. It sounds like, wow, Joseph, you're actually striving to do something really incredible, and I commend you for that.
Yeah, I second guess myself sometimes. I don't know why I do that. I really should stop. I've talked to my friends about that. Rich Giordano's another host on the network, and other friends of mine that, that we do this a lot. We second guess even our own experiences sometimes, and we shouldn't do that.
No, we shouldn't.
As a human race, we do that. We don't learn from our past experiences a lot, and I see your point on that. So I appreciate you saying that. I really do. Beyond the Omniverse asked in the Spreaker chat room that, you've, based on all your work and studies and everything that you've done, what kind of esoteric or maybe even paranormal experiences have you had? Because you're pretty honest about the astral travel thing. Have you had any spiritual experiences or experiences with the paranormal or saw UFOs or anything of that nature?
I have, yeah. Starting in 1997, I was backpacking up at Crater Lake in Oregon with several other backpackers, and we saw this light, very bright light, like a laser that had no beginning and no ending, but was heading straight into the depths of Crater Lake, and fell to the ground laughing with these other guys, and we ended up talking about it all night. But at the time, we had a couple other guys in the group that got ahead of us. We went racing up to see if they saw it. And just before we got to the woods where we had our tents, we saw it again right over Mount Shasta. So I use this example as a setup piece in Future Esoteric to say sometimes you need a galvanizing moment like this where you have an experience that is completely inexplicable at the time, but like achieving that black belt in karate, you take it upon yourself to learn what that was. And there's a lot of starts and stops. There's a lot of dead ends. There's a lot of disinformation, especially in ufology. But you have to keep persevering to the point where what I came away with, now I realize there's a lot of UFO activity around volcanoes, or in the case of Crater Lake, a collapsed volcano, which still presumably has a large chamber underneath. So could I have witnessed something in the fourth dimension coming through? Possibly. Could I have also witnessed maybe a high-tech weapon that we now have, which I did witness the blue lights over California about 2 years ago. And I was on with Jimmy Church the following night, and he had friends that described it the exact same way I did. And it was this incredible sighting in the sky. And just like Ryan Gable and I were up at the Esoteric Ranch just this last summer with Clyde Lewis and the Ground Zero retreat.
Man.
And we all witnessed lights all over Mount Adams. So I went climbing up there the next day and saw the area where we saw all these lights. And it's like this inaccessible part of the mountain with this jagged lava rocks that would be very difficult to find your way through it. And here at night, we're seeing all these lights flying around. So yeah, there's a lot of inexplicable activity that's going on that we have to set about understanding if we really want to learn it.
I'm so jealous of you, man. I would have loved to went to that. You know, I'm a huge fan of just about everyone you said there. Ryan, you know, Clyde Lewis and Ryan Gable are some people that I believe that are, sorry guys, my Facebook phone keeps blowing up in the background, but they are doing good work.
Two very good friends of mine. We all have done
not the kind of host, together. Man, I'm going to say that, you know, because they do radio shows that I don't want to talk. They do good work. They're doing Absolutely. Good things. And you are too, man. And by the way, before we go into the break, tell everybody how they can listen to your radio show.
Right. So every Wednesday on Revolution Radio from 3 to 5 on West Coast time, where I'm at, I do the Esoteric Circle in Studio B, and then I start with Late Night in the Midlands from 4 to 6. So there's an hour overlap, and you can listen free to either one of those. They do have a firewall to pay to access the archives. But right now I'm doing chapters of Modern Esoteric. So if you find some of this material interesting, come and listen this Wednesday. And I'm going to do the chapter called Losing My Religion. And I basically read the chapter because I need to get these audio files to put together an audio book. But I'm also going to start posting them on YouTube with some images.
Cool.
And then we break it apart. We talk about it afterwards and pick up some of the salient points and further discuss. So 3 hours every Wednesday, the Esoteric Circle.
All right. There you go, guys. We're going to go into our final hour. We're going to open up the phones. We're here with Brad Olsen. This is Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on SpacedOutRadio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you're seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at SpacedOutRadio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Want more information about our programming? Check out spacedoutradio.com. You can follow our host, Joe Rube, on Twitter at Lighting the Void. Call in to tonight's show at 501-777-5631. Now, entering the radio ring from Arkansas, Spaced Out Saturday host, Joe Rube.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Rube. Don't forget, after the show tonight, S4 is on with Eric Cooper and Corey Rees, and tomorrow night, Psychic Sundays with Elizabeth Anglin. Thank you all for tuning in. Now, the call-in number for the show tonight is 501-777-5631. It's just one line, so if you don't get through, just call back. But the number is 501-777-5631 if you want to call in. Make sure to turn down your radio if you do call in, because it causes confusion in the cranium due to the delay. Now, we're continuing our discussion with Brad Olsen. We've talked about everything under the sun, I would think, but it's still, we could go on and on and on. But I think that my biggest thing with you, Brad, and because I know you've studied this probably quite a bit more than me, is you talk about the cabal, and you talk about this thing behind the scenes, the wizard behind the curtain, so to speak. Sometimes I wonder if it isn't what some people call archons or other forces that are kind of controlling, say, the capitalist movement, and even when it comes to the secret space program.
Yeah, there is an infection of the archons on planet Earth. I discuss them in Modern Esoteric in the Blood of the Gods chapter. And I reference Carlos Castaneda, talks about him quite extensively. His books with Don Juan, the shaman of Mexico. And they've been able to detect them and see that they feed off of our energy. And this is in the fourth dimension. So this might be new or spaced out Saturday material to some of your listeners, but it absolutely has to be discussed. And we have to start understanding that these unseen realms actually do have an impact on our lives. And this Archon network, which according to Carlos Castaneda, have been these intruders that come here, and they basically feed off of our negative energies when we're upset, when we're angry, when we're scared, when we're fearful. And there's even a word for it called louche, that they look at it, our energy in this state, as something that they can prey upon. And so most of us are totally unaware, totally ignorant of such a thing. Yet, why do you think the media and movies and TV is so much flashing violence and guns and fearfulness? Because that is programming us to be in that state. And we were talking about in the first hour with free will. When you give yourself over to that, it's just like when you in the vampire legends and lore, you have to willingly allow a vampire in. If you're standing at the door with a cross and garlic, get away, you can't come in, they can't come in. But if you leave the window open and the beautiful woman thinks going to get seduced by this man who turns out to a vampire that flies in, you're allowing it in. And in such a way, this is also how the archons work. Because when you're in a higher consciousness state, when you're happy all the time, when you're giving, when you're charitable, compassionate, and wise, they can't affect you. They want you to be in this lower state. And that's why they have been so preoccupied with mind control via Hollywood and television programming. It's called programming for a reason, tell-lie-vision, for so long. And that's why so much of this pedophilia stuff is going to come out of Hollywood. It already is. And we're going to see the real depravity and depths of how dark it can go there, because this is the controlling network. There is a war on, and the war is for our minds. And the way they're going to do it is to, well, let's face it, if we were to go down into the road of World War III, almost all of us would be in a fearful, dark, angry state. And that's why it is so dangerous right now that we could flip over to this, because think about how much loosh would be generated if the lights went off for 2 weeks. People would be freaking out. Okay, it wouldn't be one of our better moments, but it would be a very scary moment. And then if people are kicking in the doors because they can't eat, that's another thing. You know, there's an old saying that goes all the way back to the French Revolution, Joseph, and that is, a revolution is only 8 meals away. So when people go hungry for 3 days, they go crazy. And the controllers know that. They absolutely know that. That's why they make food so cheap. That's why you can get a burger for 99 cents and it'll tide you over. Because they know all you got to do is feed these sheeple and that'll keep them from revolting. But if there was ever an event where you didn't have that capacity to feed yourself, quite naturally, a lot of people would be upset. But as we were talking about over the break, there are ways around that. And some of the yogi masters are practicing aeritarians. And I've found that food quantity is one of the best ways to lose weight or control weight. Just don't eat that much. And you'd be surprised. You really don't need a whole lot to get by and feel good.
Yeah, there's a big diet. You know, there's always these diet trends, but a trend I've seen lately is the fasting trend, where someone will fast for a few days or 2 or 3 days or whatever, and then eat what they want and then fast again. It makes you wonder what's healthy and what's not, but it seems to work for some of these trainers.
Yeah, and there's the paleo diet, you know, just eating what a caveman would eat, and there's some logic in that. I kind of do that. I have 1 meal a day. I try to eat only fruit and nuts, because I saw this special about Gandhi when he was doing the Salt March to the Sea. He's a famous vegetarian. And during his march, and he walked hundreds of miles, all he ate was fruit and nuts. I think, geez, Gandhi can do that for all 3 of his meals a day. I could at least do that subbing out one of them. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it's been a good technique.
Really? Because you're a pretty big guy. I think Gandhi might have been kind of scrawny. I don't know, but
he was scrawny.
He might have been a little scrawny.
You got that. Let's say I bring in more calories than he does, and I probably exert more as well. But
yeah, what are you, like 6'5" or something? You're a pretty big dude.
Yeah.
So I know you're eating meat. I know you're eating burgers.
Not
you already
all the time,
admitted
though.
that.
Really, one meal a day max is what I try to keep myself to, and again, try to make it like flavoring.
You know, earlier we talked about, understanding consciousness and synchronicities and things like that that tend to come through the realms of, I guess, whatever's underneath, the esoteric, and manifest itself into this realm. But what are your views, not just in astrology, but let's say like geomancy or even tarot? Do you think there's some validity in that? You know, I know some people are going to be like, duh, and others are skeptics about it, but I've found that once people start understanding symbolism and the nature of consciousness and synchronicities, that the divinatory arts start to make a little bit of sense. What are your views on that?
Yeah, they do. Oh, I would agree with you, and I cover all those in Modern Esoteric. I have to. We have to look at all this stuff, and as we said with the I Ching and other forms of divinity, the Ouija board, just having an openness that it could be expressing something to you is more than half of the distance you need to go with it. Because somebody who says, oh, that's absolutely bunk, I'm not even going to I won't even look at that. Well, they're not going to get any kind of derived benefit. But if you're looking at the meaningful coincidences and the scarab lands on your windowsill when you're writing about it, there could be a deeper meaning into it, just as there could be a deeper meaning into the tarot and other forms of divinity.
We have a caller on the line, 970 area code. You're on the air with Brad Olsen.
Hey, Brad. Hey, Joe. This is Tess.
Hey, Tess.
I had a question. As far as the fourth dimension, do you think the Mandela effect, as far as Nelson Mandela and Forrest Gump and Mr. Rogers and the Bernstein Bears, do you think that has anything to do with a shift to the fourth dimension? Because I know there's been several changes over time that don't add up in my mind.
That's a great question, Tess. Yeah, I completely believe that the Mandela effect is happening in our lives. And what it is, Tess, is the best way I can explain it to you, is there are perturbations in the timelines that the timelines can be messed with a little bit. Just as we were talking earlier that the future is nothing but a series of probabilities, there are outcomes that are being steered through this secret government, through the hidden hand that basically makes the world go in certain directions. And sometimes the Mandela effect is when the timelines flip back and forth. And then we get these little remnants of our memory, mirror, mirror on the wall, not mirror, mirror in the wall as it is today. And I was like, I could have sworn when I was a kid I heard it that way. And you did.
Yeah, we played it like that all the time.
Right. But there are these subtle shifts in the timeline because there is a lot going on right now, because there are so many different agendas that are at play right now, extraterrestrial agendas, and that's exopolitics that we have to look at. But there are also many agendas of the different people on this planet. And let's face it, there is also inner terrestrials within the Earth that also have their agendas. How they always try to get us to point outwards and say, oh, they're coming from out there, from far, far away. But in all the scout crafts that they discovered from Roswell to Aztec, guess what? There's no pantry or kitchen. There's no bathroom. So how do you travel all the way across the universe with none of that? Well, you don't, because they're coming from the inner Earth. Yeah, they're inner terrestrials. And so they have an agenda as well, because some of them are basically fighting for their very existence, such as the Greys, who have DNA that's basically wearing out because they're all test tube. And they need to use us, humans, and our DNA to splice with their own, creating hybrids to perpetuate their own race. So they have a very strong agenda. And look, they're operating from the fourth dimension. So they have abilities that we're only speculating what that can be. But that's why you have aliens that can phase through walls, aliens that can basically appear and disappear. And the only way to trap them, they found, is to create an electromagnetic cage. That keeps them locked in third dimensional reality.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So there are ways, but more to your point, Tess, about the Mandela effect, that this is very observant of you to basically call that out. And I know a lot of people are these days, to realize that our timeline can be in flux. And I think that's the best way I can explain Mandela effect. Joe, you want to have a crack at it?
Well, no, I'm just
to follow
listening.
up on that, do you also think that there's a possibility that, because there's so many of us that have the same memory, Curious George had a tail, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there's other people who don't. So do you think that people shifted as well? Like some of us stayed here and some of us shifted? Because, like, there's several times that I'll say, okay, other dimensional Vern, because he doesn't remember it the same. He's like, no, he never said, beam me up, Scotty, and he never said, Luke, I am your father. I'm like, yes, I know they did, but, I mean, there's different people that remember it differently, and the mass that remembers it the same.
Yeah, Joe, you want to have a crack at it? I'd like to hear your
I don't know much about the Mandela effect. Perplexes me. The one thing that I know for a fact that I saw, and was the Shazam thing. Even Sinbad denies that, and I don't know why he's denying it, because I remember it specifically. And the whole, the one thing I actually saw that perplexed me too about it was C-3PO. Well, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but C-3 he had a silver leg in some pictures, and some pictures he didn't, and I never saw that, not once. But now they're showing the old videos that's what's on there, so it does seem that some of this stuff is clashing. But I mean, that stuff we could talk about quantum entanglement, some experiments that we're doing with CERN and things that I think might be affecting these realms.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, CERN is what I heard about that. Try and recreate the Big Bang. When the Big Bang happened, it wasn't just one, duplicated, multiple. So maybe when they're trying to recreate it and they're, doing these collisions inside their little tubes, thinking they can contain this, like maybe they're just changing things, or maybe it's something else, like a dimensional shift. Like, it's really perplexing. It's odd to me. Like, I know it came out several years ago, but I just happened upon it this last year, and it really blew my mind. So.
Are you watching Wile E. Coyote fall off the cliff in the background, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Sorry.
I heard some old Looney Tunes cartoons going off, and it kind of reminded me of my childhood. And we're talking about the Mandela effect. Hey,
yeah, it's nice to unwind at night to some Looney Tunes.
That's right. Do you have any other questions for Brad?
No, that was, on point on my mind as far as a question that I wanted to ask. There really wasn't anything else.
Thanks for calling. It was cool talking to you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, great show.
Bye-bye. That is a subject that when you say, hey, Joe, you want to take over? I back away from the Mandela effect thing because I think we're talking about science and stuff that we can't begin to understand. I don't think that the scientists that are messing around with this stuff understand it the way they think they do.
Yeah, especially with what they could possibly be doing down there with the CERN device, that it may be opening portals. One of the key properties when we learn about how UFOs fly and function, and how they're actually interdimensional craft, which are powered by the minds of the pilots. That's why in many UFOs there are no glass windows or anywhere around the pilot seat that they're looking out, like pilots that we know today, how they fly, that they're flying it with their minds. And the ships are able to warp gravity around it. So even when they're going straight up, it's like they're falling down with gravity, because they're making this force field around the craft behave in such a way. And one of the key tenets is that when they get up to close to the speed of light, around 9/10 the speed of light, they make an interdimensional shift 90 degrees. And this can be seen in videos and countless reports of witnesses seeing flying craft, is that it will go extremely fast and then make a quick 90-degree turn. That is going into the other dimensions.
Yeah,
so what they're screwing around with down in CERN is getting this thing up to 9/10 the speed of light, spinning around and around and around. And this could create a Stargate. And what may come in and out of the dimensions is up to debate, but let's just say it might be something we don't really want to be fooling around with too much.
Yeah, and we don't even know how black holes are created and what that's all about. I mean, Stephen Hawking studied it pretty extensively, and, they kind of understood it. Well, how do we know that nothing's off the table? But how do we know that they're not going to, create a black hole that starts in Europe somewhere and, it sucks the earth out of our existence, because they're trying to figure out what matter is. To me, I think it's fascinating, but it could be just as dangerous as, artificial intelligent weapons that, think that doesn't have human intervention that kill people. I don't know. It scares me a little is all I'm saying.
And wormholes, how craft are able to move through the universe very quickly, and that how each planet, even zones on each planet, have little micro wormholes that is also used in time travel. If you follow Andrew Basiago and some of his explanations of how he was working in Project Pegasus and moving through to other time zones. But as far as CERN goes, it's interesting that every time it's supposed to go online and they're going to do one of these quantum entanglement or these experiments where they get the device going that super fast at 9/10 speed of light, something goes wrong at CERN and shuts it down. And it kind of makes me wonder that maybe there are benevolent ETs who are watching over us and say, you're not ready for this, humans. You're still the planet of the apes down there. We don't want you creating artificial stargates. And then something like one of the mirrors is just off, so they can't do the experiment. And then it takes another year or two to try to get the thing online. And then something else goes wrong, and they can't figure out how it keeps getting shut down. But it is weird science. You're right. And we're entering a brave new world with this stuff. And who the heck knows what's going to happen if they do get it online? Maybe it would be an invitation for the archonic, demonic realm to bring in even more of these forces to screw us up even further. We really want to try to get rid of them. We want to get rid of the archonic network. But how are we going to do it if we don't understand much about the dimensions, most especially this fourth dimension where they're said to mostly reside?
You know why there's such a validity to what you're saying in these things that you haven't read Robert Monroe's books, have you?
I'm not, no.
Okay, so Robert Monroe was totally into out-of-body experiences. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that he's talking about that he stumbled upon, you've brought up Loosh, which he said that entities in these realms called that and talked to him about these things. That there was Loosh created also by the relations between us, the emotions that we have.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? There's a parallel. You haven't even read this guy's book,
No.
The electrical cages that you were talking earlier that some people get trapped in, how our consciousness is trapped in several, almost like an onion, it seems like. And there was a question in the chat room, I believe, BTO asked about the fourth dimension. Do you think that it's like an onion, like dimensions are like an onion? I think that's what it was. I'll have to scroll back and look. Sorry about that. But yeah, dimensions are something that perplexes me too, because what if all this stuff is an illusion and everything is internal? That's kind of the theory that the physicist Thomas Campbell has, that it's all just a virtual reality.
Right. That we're living in a holographic universe and this is all a simulation. Elon Musk even said, he gave it huge odds that we are living in this giant simulation, and that a lot of these things that happen in our lives, such as synchronicity that we've been discussing, come for a very specific reason. In fact, our mind can attract those things that we want to bring into it. And we've heard all the psychobabble about the power of positive thinking, but it's true and it's real. And if you want to make a change in your life, just like becoming that black belt in karate, you can do it, but you have to put in the discipline. And like the Stones say, you can't always get what you want, but you'll get what you need.
Catalina asked in the Spreaker chat room, Brad, how can we protect ourselves from the effects of chemtrails? Are we becoming human antennas?
Great question. I was telling you at the break that Clyde Lewis and I were speaking at the Geoengineering Chemtrail Symposium here in San Francisco a couple months ago. And boy, we're getting sprayed like rats down here lately. But to the question, how can we protect ourselves? It's kind of like, how do we open up our pineal gland? Doing things that help your body out, making yourself as strong as you can, eating right, taking supplements, making those smoothies every day. That's a good first step. Boy, I'm bereft to say stay inside when you see them spraying, because it would really suck if we have to change our lifestyle based on chemtrail spraying days. But who knows, it might come to that. And they say flu season starts when the chemtrails come over. That was even a funny Simpsons episode. Boy, talk about them putting embedded truths in that series. Big chemtrails flying over, and Marge says, well, it looks like it's the beginning of the flu season.
Yeah, The Simpsons has a way to they've had many shows where they've given you some hints about some stuff that's going on. It's pretty, I mean, it's funny. It is funny. I see that stuff even here where I live. It's not, you think it would just do it in the main areas like the major populated areas. But no, I'll wake up sometimes at the crack of dawn, go outside and see big fat X's in the sky just over here, and I'm like, what? Man, there's no place that's safe to hide, and I definitely don't want to live in a world where I can't go outside. But you might be right. If we don't do something about it, if we as a society don't do something about it, there's nothing that it's not going to change. It's just going to get worse.
We have to call to task that this is happening and demand a change. These are some of these programs are these secret access programs or SAPs, these compartmentalized. And look, let's face it, you put on your nightly news and watch the weather report, they are never going to talk about chemtrails. And you could see them forming and creating clouds right before your very eyes on a blue sky day like we get out here in California all the time. X's crossing the sky, turning into this white milky cloud. I play volleyball down at Baker Beach. I'm down there a couple hours a day sometimes on a sunny day, and they'll come in. Lately, they've been ruining our days. We can't even go down there because there's so many chemis in the sky. And they're doing it under the veiled auspices of global dimming. That, we've screwed up the planet so bad using these fossil fuels, which we didn't have to use for the last 100 years if we had gone the route of Tesla technology. But you guys have polluted the planet so bad that we have to do these covert operations to cover it up. And look, the head of the CIA under Obama, this guy named John Bremer, he got up in front of the Council on Foreign Relations about a year and a half ago and said, I'm really excited about these new geoengineering programs. There's one called stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, that I'm really excited about. It's kind of like simulating a volcano and putting an ash cover over the planet so we can cool this planet off for global warming. He said that. You can go listen to that interview. If you're paying attention, you absolutely know for a fact that this is happening. But they're not telling us. They're lying to us, in fact. Because what's not being told also speaks volume. Always remember that.
Yeah, there is, I'm going to be honest with you. I was skeptical, as stupid as it sounds. I was skeptical about chemtrails. Really was. It's like, surely our own government and people, they wouldn't do that to us. No way. Surely not.
Yeah. Ask all those people that got syphilis in the 1930s from their government that loves them so much. Ask the people right here in San Francisco. They sprayed us in the 1950s. Clyde and I talked about it during the chemtrail symposium here. And people got very sick, and one guy even died. Okay? They will kill their own people. That's not a problem. And if you read the Georgia Guidestones, they want to get rid of 90% of us. So there is a slow kill agenda. And I think that's what the chat room person was alluding to. What can we do to mitigate the damages that are being done through all these various ways? Because let's face it, it is in the air, it is in the soil, it is in the water that we're being poisoned. One of the talks that I give is everything is fake, top 10 deceptions in the world today. I could draw upon a lot of material, as you know. Yeah, but I want people to understand this because it affects their lives. It affects their health. And it affects their mental well-being as well. If you continue to live in a denial state about all this stuff, it will start breaking you down. If you keep getting vaccines, the mercury will accumulate in your head, and you will get Alzheimer's. If you follow the directions we're supposed to be given, your children could very well become autistic, and you could very well die prematurely. So this information is vital for everybody to understand, and you ignore it at your own peril.
Yeah, I've had some doubts about it. Here's the thing: when the guy from the CIA came out and talked about they were studying weather manipulation, by the time that they've already told you that they're doing something up there in public and in press
done it
form.
for 2 decades.
Man, they've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, and I know this is going to sound crazy to some of you, I'm not saying that weather manipulation is a bad thing, but how they go about it, to me, is a bad thing. I mean, there was a video where a guy snuck into one of the companies that does it. It's a contractor for it. And they was like, well, you can't record, but we don't mind asking your questions. And he's like, okay, I won't record. Put his phone in his pocket, kept recording. And, these guys were telling him everything. Oh, we do contracts for the government and, sometimes the military and all over the place, And he's like, well, what do you do? Well, you do weather manipulation. Well, how do you do it? Just giving it away. And the guy didn't even see the guy's phone in there. It's on, if you just Google it, or you can watch Frankenskies as well. That'll open your eyes up. Look, we may have to manipulate the weather one day because obviously we're not taking care of this planet the way we should. And if it spins out of control, we may have to do a few things. But when you're dropping just things that don't belong in the body in the sky, what do you think is going to happen? And don't you think it's weird that all these celebrities drop off that are talking about it? And let's take Bowie, for example, really into revealing a lot of things, dead. Prince gets on there. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy to kill him, but it's like it's happening. He talked about it and said, hey, this is real. Chemtrails are real. Guess what? Prince is dead. What's going on there? That's just too weird to me.
Yeah. Or Joan Rivers calling out Obama being gay and Michelle being a tranny. Dead. A month later. Yeah, what's going on there? Well, they don't like people blabbing, especially celebrities, because I think to get in that position, one, you almost have to make a deal with the devil, and maybe that's through blackmail that they have you and they can control you. Look, I get screwed with. I'm just a guy. I'm just kind of anonymous guy. I don't even really seek the fame and celebrityship. I think that's kind of sucks. I kind of like being anonymous, but they still mess with me. I'm still here. I'm still alive. But what's going on with that is, if they are in that position where they're a household name, if Michael Jackson is talking secretly and he's being recorded on his cell phone, that when he goes and does those 30 concerts in London, he's going to start talking about pedophilia and then dies before he goes on that concert. Yeah, maybe that is kind of suspicious. Or like you said, Prince was talking about chemtrails and then he died prematurely in somewhat suspicious circumstances. So that is the extent of preserving these core secrets, which is this esoteric knowledge to the cabal, to the global elite. They do not want humans to be enlightened and wake up. In fact, they prefer to see most of us dead, and they're actually starting to do that. So you have to be vigilant and empower yourself to be aware of what's going on and be able to combat it. Look at it as self-defense. That's what my friend Jim Mars, a great author who just recently passed away, said in his book, The Depopulation Agenda. It's self-defense at this point. We're just trying to self-preserve ourselves because we're under assault in so many different ways.
Yeah, so I totally agree. And you guys, I'm seeing all of your questions. I'm just getting to them one at a time, and I have to let Brad say what he's trying to finish. I don't want to interrupt him. But there is a question in here that I'm curious about too, because I've heard you talk about it from Daryl in the chat room about the Morgellons, an update. They're wanting an update on your issues with that.
Yeah, I have it. I'm dealing with it. I'm getting rid of it at the moment, and it's through a lot of these lifestyle changes that I've made. Because I used to eat junk food too. I used to drink soda, and not to say that's how I got it. If you want to understand about Morgellons, watch Sophia Smallstorm, her videos, and she has very good documentary evidence that it is also part of the chemtrail agenda, that we are being sprayed by it. Why do you think Morgellons is a 21st century syndrome? And I call it a syndrome and not a disease because I would make the argument that everybody's got it by now. And if you don't believe me, do the red wine test. Hold red wine in your mouth for 5 minutes and spit it out. And if you have any little rubbing alcohol, pour a little bit in the dish and you'll see these things start to move. I mean, it's creepy. We were talking about transhumanism. Well, it's being forced down our throat. And these things are alive, and they're getting into our body, and they are synthetic biology that can reproduce. So if that's not one of the scariest things we've said all night, I'm not sure what is. But this is a very real phenomenon.
I told Dave Cruz about this when I first heard you talking about Morgellons. I had a panic disorder when I was in my early 20s, and I remember, and you can tell me if this is the same thing, but I remember that just the feeling that my body was going through some kind of crazy change, because I just got off doing some heavy drugs and stuff. I was a big party animal in my early 20s, and I quit everything. Had a big shift in consciousness, and well, I can tell that story later. But I was pulling these stringy things that seemed like they were coming out of my skin, clear, crystalline looking hairs almost. And everybody's like, "What is that?" Even my buddies that we were deep down in the country, and they would say, "Look, Roop keeps pulling this stuff out of his skin. I don't know where it's coming from." Is that Morgellons? Is that the same thing?
It could very well be. And that's one of the symptoms of what it is. Joni Mitchell, the famous folk singer, is probably the most famous person who's had it and is outspoken about it. She calls it, quite frankly, the alien fibers. And she says it has the ability to take over some of the organs in the body. And I would agree that it's very much an internal issue coming out. And we were talking earlier about doing cleanses. One very simple cleanse, and I often love it when the simplest solution is just so basic and it gets the job done. So there's this Facebook page I got turned on to about doing this cleanse just using cabbage and Himalayan sea salt and letting it ferment for 3 days, and then putting in your refrigerator, and then taking a couple glasses of it in the morning. I'll tell you, this Morgellons had taken over my stomach and my intestines and some of the things that came out. They call it waterfalls. I don't want to get too gross here, but I've never seen anything like that come out. And this was only a few weeks ago. And I'm going to do it again after the Sedona trip. But basically, it is weaponized Candida, and that's actually the name of the Facebook page. And the woman's name is Jillian. It's called Jillian's Juice, doing this protocol. I would recommend it to you and everybody else. One, take the red wine test. If you're spitting out these fibers, you got it. And if you want to get rid of it, consider doing some of these cleanses. And I would agree with Jillian that it is weaponized, just like Morgellons is weaponized to use against us. And that's why so many people have a yellow tongue, or indigestion problems, or bloating, or inflammation. A lot of this has to do with Candida, which is also part of Morgellons, at least in my case, in the stomach, in the intestines. So that's what I'm attacking with right now. But if anybody is listening and they have any kind of fibers, I'm having very good success with cannabis body butter, which seems to just eat up the fungus. And it is fungal by nature, the Morgellons, but the fibers then do erupt from the skin and take a long time to heal, and they're disfiguring and embarrassing and so many other things. This is what we're dealing with. Once again, we're on this razor's edge. We have this great potential ahead of us, but we have this controlling elite, this group that wants to keep us down. And I would even venture to say that the Archons are part of it, and these malevolent ETs, which are also part of this infection of keeping the human race in an infantile state. So we do not rise up, we do not become enlightened, and we do not call them out on what they're doing to us, but we absolutely have to.
You're freaking me out, Brad.
Yeah, good thing it's coming on 15 minutes left on the show to get into some of these freak out issues. But hey, we have to talk about it. It has to be discussed.
Not because of what you're saying, but because not because of what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad you're spreading this information. And to some, it may sound aloof, but if you really, the more you research, the more you're going to get scared if you really do your research. And I think that the thing that scared me the most a minute ago, you were talking about the Candida thing. When I had that happen to me, I think I was 21 years old. I was having terrible stomach issues to the point where the doctor that was working on me was actually recording what he was trying to do. It was almost like I was his own science experiment. And he had talked to me about this Candida thing. He had given me medicine to battle it and was going to have my stomach scoped. Now, they didn't see it. Well, I don't know if they were looking for it, but I did have my stomach scoped, and they didn't say they saw any Candida. Well, why would my doctor, after I told him the things I just told you, start telling me to, combat this stuff? And you can't really combat it with medicine. It's all diet, pretty much.
Correct. I wasted several years going to a dermatologist and them giving me some kind of topical cream that didn't really do anything. In fact, it may have spread it and made it worse. All the while, the Candida was getting stronger and stronger in my body. Now I know how to attack it, but in some ways the damage is done. And I'm not even absolutely positive that you can ever really get rid of Candida or Morgellons in your lifetime.
That's what I was going to ask.
It's that insidious.
Right.
It's that intense. And of course, this is a very dark place, and this is what can get us very upset. But again, you'd be feeding the archons if you worry about this every day. Joseph, 1 year ago, well, right around the winter solstice, almost a year ago, I was going down to Baker Beach on a sunny day, and I saw a body floating in the water. I helped recover a suicide off the Golden Gate Bridge. And one of the persons I know down there who was there and saw it said, well, you know about that girl? I said, no. They put up a obituary for her, and I read it, and it sounds like she had Morgellons, and she had it on her hand, and she couldn't get rid of it, and she became so despondent she killed herself. And I'm considering reaching out to the family at that year anniversary in a couple weeks and letting them know that I was the one who was there when she came ashore, and was it indeed Morgellons that was described in her obituary, and finding it out. But people are killing themselves over this. This is how dark it goes, and this is how
it's freaking me out even more, man.
No,
I've thought about suicide when I was going through that stuff. I'm not playing.
How did you get rid of it then?
I don't know.
What'd you do?
I'm telling you, what I did was, I think it has a lot to do with not just diet, but there's something. I don't think I got rid of it totally, to be honest with you. But as far as the stomach issues, no, I don't have that. But as far as the stomach issues, I've always had stomach issues. But as far as my body was so out of whack that I was going into severe panic and anxiety, but I felt terrible and weird all the time. Yeah. And what I done was I put myself through rigorous physical training and diet, the strictest diet I ever been on in my life. And I was also I thought that this was a spiritual attack because I'd given up on science at that point. And
in a way it is.
And so what had happened was, and there's people in my family that will attest to this, is that I wrote down every demon that controlled me to that point. Fear, what was causing the panic attacks, the fibers every time I'd pick one out of my arm or my chest or whatever, where it was coming from, would freak me out into having another panic attack. So it was like, I told my father at one time, I said, look, I can't do this anymore. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, I can't live like this. I'm not going to live like this. And he goes, if you're saying what I think you're saying, then we need to have a talk. And we had a talk, and it took me 2 years, but I will say it's like I battled it away month by month, but it was like when the anxiety left, everything left. But it was more of a spiritual battle, to be honest with you. But I still think I have some underlying, based on some of my physical symptoms nowadays, something's still there,
Are you Rh negative blood type, or is that in your family? Do you know?
I don't know.
because it does seem to afflict Rh negative blood types like my family, which is 15% of us. And boy, it's too bad we're running out of time, because we could talk about that and probably go a whole hour dissecting this weird aspect of the human race, which is, and this happened in my family. Here's an example. My grandmother is Rh negative. She married a man who is Rh positive. My dad's Rh negative. My aunt was Rh positive. And then I had an uncle who was born who was Rh positive. While he was being born, some of my grandmother's blood infected Uncle Douglas, and he became what they called a blue baby. His skin went blue because they were fighting off my grandmother's blood, which was viewed by the body as an infection. And in fact, he died after 5 days. And this is an occurrence that only happens in the human race. There is no other animal species where a mother's blood type can kill its own offspring. And indeed, this is a very good case that the human race is actually several species in one. And the Rh negative, which is basically what all the elite bloodlines are all about, and they are Rh negative. And this goes into the elongated skulls as well as some of this ancient alien stuff that goes way back. But it seems that, and I would say that more than just seems, it is appearing in Rh negative blood people more than the general population. That is Morgellons and some of these other things. Well, then the natural question is, well, why would they do this to themselves? And the same thing is with chemtrails. Why would the elite do this to themselves? Well, if they have a way out, if they have a way to treat it and make it so that they're not suffering from Morgellons through some way that they can do it. And let's face it, even in the cafeteria in Monsanto and the White House, they all eat organic food. They do not eat the food that they purport that the rest of us should eat.
I heard the story about Hillary's cook. Yeah. I heard that story. Like that dude's ended up murdered or something because he heard something. But he talked about how she was extremely particular about that stuff.
They all are. They all are. So they know that diet is a huge factor. Do you ever see commercials on TV when you watch a football game? Oh, eat an apple right now, or go get an organic salad. No, they're pushing the junk food on the rest of us. And by the way, the health ranger Mike Adams has done some studies. You should watch his video. He opened up a chicken McNugget and found Morgellons. So they're actually spiking the food as well with this stuff. And it is getting into the general population. And I really, as much as some of the listeners who may be hearing this for the first time, do the red wine test. Red wine in your mouth, 5 minutes, spit it out. You observe what comes out of your body. Okay.
What comes out? Tell me.
Well, these fibers.
Okay.
Come out of the cheek and the throat. And as I said, they will interact with rubbing alcohol. You can also use the Geoforce. Is that what it's called? That powder stuff. There's a video on it. I've gotten results using just the alcohol, pure rubbing alcohol that makes these things squirm around. It's so gross. It's so weird to think that this is coming out of your body, but it's
you
weaponized.
Look like you're in bad health, brother.
I'm not. I'm in extraordinary good health, and that's the thing. This could happen to anybody, and it is probably happening to all of us. But the Rh negative people are exhibiting the most outward signs with it now, and that's what my family is. And I don't want to talk about my family, but I think it's happening in this group as well.
Wow, that's some pretty scary stuff, man. I don't know that those fibers that came off of me were Morgellons. I don't know that. I don't know what they were, but I know they scared me. And I know I was having problems with, or my doctor thought I was having problems with candida. And I even read a big, thick book about it because no one knew what was going on with me. I also know that I was psychologically tortured. You know, when you were talking about someone committing suicide from this stuff. So you ask how I came out of it, man, I really don't know, other than it was pure will, I guess. But I don't know if that's what happened to me, but just the thought of this, I don't know why we're not looking into it. Are you the only one doing this stuff, you know, combating the Morgellons thing? Is it, or is
you know,
there
maybe
other people
because
involved?
I was one of the first people who started exhibiting signs of it, it was basically forced upon me. And in the capacity that I'm in as a researcher, as a speaker, as someone who can articulate what this is all about and try to let people know it's not going to kill you. Well, if you let it go, it could. And Facebook friends with Clifford Carnicon, I follow his work, and he's talking about in some of his videos, now they're opening people up, and you mentioned this too, finding all these exotic diseases in their body, or the Morgellons just taking control, and just like all these black fibers everywhere. I mean, we're almost out of time here. I don't really want to leave this on such a dark note, and this can be very, very depressing for people, especially if they think they might have it or they do the red wine test. But I'm telling you, you can reverse it. You can start to detox your body. And if it's not just candida, let's say you have no outward signs of any of this stuff, you should do a detox anyways, because we are getting dumped on so many toxins in our environment, in our world, and what we consume, that our bodies are dirty. They're really dirty, and we need to clean them up in so many different ways. So stay positive about this stuff. Don't jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't want to pull out any more bodies. And I'll do the best I can. I think I got a book coming out on this subject after I finish Beyond Esoteric. It might have to be my next book after that, just for the information's sake of helping people get through this, because it's pretty dark when you go down that way. It's transhumanism being forced upon us.
That's right.
We're
That's
becoming
exactly
human
what I
2.0.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of the darkest. People talk about Satanism and stuff. To me, that, you know, transhumanism thing is pretty close to what I would call Satanism, if you ask me. You know, I want to live to be 200 years old, or we could do a whole nother show about that, I guess. But that's coming. It's already here, actually.
I have a chapter called Living to 200 in the Thrive section of Modern Esoteric. So I'm right there with you, buddy. But
you guys need to get Brad's work, period. I'm just saying, pick up Modern Esoteric, Future Esoteric, read the books. You can cite just about everything he talks about. I wanted to get in a little bit into Gurdjieff, but we're running out of time. So, you know, I'm kind of fascinated with that man myself. But it would be cool down the road, especially if you come out with a new book or whatever, if you come back and hang out with us again, or even come on Lighting the Void sometime.
Yeah, you know, we barely scraped the surface of Future Esoteric, so there's a lot more topics we could talk about, Joseph, and I'd be delighted to have this conversation with you again.
Awesome. And tell everybody again out there, for anybody that's new, that's just heard you for the first time, how they can find your work and pick up your books and find you on the web.
Yeah, so my website's bradolsen.com, OLSEN. Find about all the different various projects I'm working on. And my publishing website is cccpublishing.com. 3 C's Publishing, one word. All my books, all Zagami's books, and other authors that I've been working on for 25 years. My YouTube channel, Esoteric Series, and you can find me on Facebook with that too.
Right on. Man, that was a great show. I appreciate you coming on, Brad. We'll have to do it again. Thanks for coming on and spending time with us. I know you're a busy man, so I don't take it for granted. It's been an awesome show.
Well, thanks again for having me on, Joseph. I really feel like we gotten to know each other, and looking forward to it anytime we can do it again.
Right on. Thanks for coming out. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you that came out to the chat room, the phone calls. I know some of you are hollering overtime. I'll tell you here from on out, the more the phone rings, the longer we go. How about that? Maybe not with a guest, but we may go overtime. We'll see you guys next Saturday. Hang out for S4. Thanks for hanging out with me as we start this journey into the void on Spaced Out Saturday. See you guys.
Crossing when they found me all alone. They said we need someone who needs answers, and you've been longing to be told.